For the record, my name is Brian Worrell, District 4 City Councilor, and I'm the chair of the Boston City Council Committee on Ways and Means. Today is May 23rd, 2024. This hearing is being recorded, is also being live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-tv and broadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, Fios Channel 964. The Council's budget review process will encompass a series of public hearings beginning in April and running through June. We strongly encourage residents to take a moment to engage in this process by giving testimony for the record. You can do this in several ways. One, attend one of our hearings and give public testimony. We will take public testimony at the end of each departmental hearing and also at our next hearing dedicated to public testimony, which will be held on Tuesday, May 22nd at 6 p.m. The full hearing schedule is on our website at boston.gov/council-budget. You can give testimony in person here in the chamber or virtually via Zoom. For in-person testimony, please come to the chamber and sign up on the sheet near the entrance. For virtual testimony, you can sign up using our online form on our Council Budget Review website or by emailing the committee at ccc.wm@boston.gov. When you are called to testify, please state your name and affiliation or residence and limit your comments to a few minutes to ensure that all comments and concerns can be heard. You can email your written testimony to the committee at ccc.wm@boston.gov. Or 3, submit a 2-minute video of your testimony through the form on our website. For more information on the City Council budget process and how to testify, please visit the City Council's budget website at boston.gov/council-budget. Today's hearing is on docket numbers 0670 through 0672. Orders for the FY25 operating budget, including annual appropriations for departmental operations for the school department and for the and other post-employment benefits. Docket number 0673 through 0675. Orders for a capital fund transfer appropriations. Docket number 0676 through 0678. Orders for the capital budget, including loan orders and lease purchase agreements. These matters were sponsored by Mayor Michelle Wu and referred to the committee on April 10, 2024. Today, I'm joined by my colleagues, Councilor Murphy, Council President Louis Jen, Councilor Pepin, who's also the Vice Chair of the committee, Councilor Braden, and Councilor Sharon Durkin. I would like to introduce today's panelists. Testifying on behalf of the administration, Budget Director Jim Williamson, CFO Ashley Grafenberger, Director of Public Facilities Department Kerry Griffin, Chief of Streets Franklin Hodge, and Commissioner Woods, Parks and Recreation, and also Deputy Superintendent of Operations, Deputy Superintendent DePina. We'll turn it over to the administration for a presentation and then to my colleagues for questioning. Thank you.
Okay, great. Good morning, councilors. Thanks for having us back. We're here this morning to talk about the proposed fiscal 25 through 29 capital plan. So the plan for fiscal 2025 through 2029 totals $4.7 billion. This is a nearly $500 million increase over the previous plan. The 5-year plan that we're proposing invests in 427 projects and programs across all neighborhoods and makes significant investments in BPS facilities, transportation, mobility, and pedestrian safety, parks, playgrounds, and recreational facilities. While this plan is partially financed with city funds and state and federal grants, the plan is predominantly funded through general obligation or GO bonds that we issue at the lowest cost of borrowing due to the city's AAA bond rating that it has enjoyed since 2010, due to our strong fiscal management policies and commitment to responsible budgeting. The plan supports the large inventory of capital assets that the city maintains, which includes hundreds of miles of roads, bridges, parks throughout the city, and over 300 municipal buildings. As I mentioned, to finance the plan, the city leverages a combination of general obligation bonds and other city funds, as well as grants from the state and federal government. The plan can be categorized into two categories. The projects included can be categorized as either a project, which is a discrete improvement at a specific location, such as a particular park or library, or annual programs, which are recurring investments at different locations throughout the city that can fluctuate from year to year, such as sidewalk repairs. So the plan would not specify particular locations for this type of work, so you won't see those types of location-specific sites listed, but they're nested under the programs. In total, there are 367 projects and 60 programs included in this capital plan. Now I'll turn it over to Jim to provide an overview of the financing that underpins the 5-year plan.
Thank you, Ashley. So the question is what is a capital bond loan order? So we've talked about that bond loan orders support the funding for like 76% of the FY25 through 29 capital plan. All general obligation debt of the city requires the authorization on loan orders by the city council via 2 votes of the city council at least 14 days apart, with the final approval of the mayor. Loan orders reference specific statutory purposes and authorize the city to expend funding for public assets with a long-term useful life. And we have the ability through that authorization to issue bonds, notes, certificates of indebtedness, and these provide the revenue to support the appropriation. In terms of bonds and debt management, the City of Boston issues general obligation bonds to fund capital projects. The timing and issue of these bond issues depends in part on the market conditions. We're supported with a financial advisor to make recommendations in that regard, and internal cash needs to support the projects. General obligation bonds represent a direct general obligation debt for the city and are backed by the full faith and credit of the City of Boston. So that's sort of where the connection is to the city having a good standing, a good financial status, because ultimately the bondholders who are buying our bonds get support in that by knowing that it's a well-run city that will support the bonds. Bond issues fund dozens of active and recently completed projects. Typically, larger projects are funded across several bond issues. The city repays the bond principal and interest as part of approved schedules, and these schedules are summarized as debt service in the fixed cost component of the annual operating budget.
The city actively manages its debt obligations through its debt management policy. The city's debt policy states that debt service shall not exceed 7% of operating budget expenditures, and that principal is repaid rapidly, with between 35 and 40% of the principal repaid within 5 years and 65 to 70 repaid within 10 years. We also have a policy around variable rate debt, but we currently do not have any variable rate debt outstanding. The reason we have this policy in place is to reinforce strong fiscal management, limit our overall debt exposure and the impact that it has on the operating budget, and really to recapture borrowing capacity more quickly, allowing us to do more projects more often. This policy, along with the city's conservative budgeting and responsible fiscal management practices, is frequently cited in our rating opinions from Moody's and S&P. In this 5-year plan, we expect that we will approach the 7% policy limit. I think it's important to pause here and note that the 7% is a limit, not necessarily a target or a goal, and that there are practical consequences to being close to or at that limit. The first being that it does limit our flexibility in accommodating projects at the margin, and also we become more sensitive to growth in the operating budget. In our projections, we assume a particular level of budgetary growth year over year, but if the budget grows by less than that in a given year, we could find ourselves above that policy threshold. Increasing the limit on debt service in the operating budget may or may not have an effect on the city's overall credit rating, but the city would need to explain and contextualize that shift in policy to rating agencies and the investment community. However, I think it's important to note that increasing debt service as a percentage of the operating budget does have an impact on our operating budget and reduces funds available for costs such as salaries, programmatic expenses, and other fixed costs, including pension and OPEB obligations. Just as a quick example, if we went from the 6% debt percentage in fiscal 25 up to 8%, for example, we would need to add an additional $94 million in that year for debt service payments, and that would create obviously ongoing costs for us as we pay down that principal over time. Sorry, I'm not done. Of course, there's always more that we need to do than we have the ability to finance under this policy, or really have the capacity to do as a city. But this policy allows us to strike an appropriate balance. It's a policy that has served the city well for decades, and at this time, we feel comfortable with the policy limits that we have in place.
Okay, so this slide here is a visual representation of the revenue components of the five-year capital plan. We've talked about that it's largely supported through general obligation bonds at 76%, and it's actually locally sourced for 84% with other city funds, largely the parking meter fund that helps support the capital plan. But there are components of state grants, federal grants, other grants. There's a tabular sort of representation of the percentages of the capital plan supported by those different revenue sources. And the city's borrowing over time is supported to meet the general obligation bond. So moving on to the next slide. This slide is a visual representation of the existing and new projected debt outstanding. So what you can see is the existing principal and interest, so it ramps up, and as Ashley discussed, we try to rapidly repay our debt, so it tails off, but we're at the same time planning for new bond issues. So right now the budget is calling for borrowings in the $400 million range over the next few years. And that's generally what supports the plan, and this is one of the elements that is the fiscal sort of parameters of how big the capital plan can be. This next slide, it just wants to acknowledge the fact that there are a lot of dedicated professionals, some of in various different departments, pursuing federal resources, external funds to bolster the capital plan. That is a part of the capital plan that can grow, that isn't restrained by city resources. Some of the larger projects and how the city dollars are matched to the federal dollars are displayed here. So there's some raised grants, including Blue Hill Ave multimodal corridor, the Roxbury resilient corridors. There's two components of a Safe Streets program with different intersections being addressed. And I also want to acknowledge that if there are, further on in the presentation, if there are any specific questions, we have members from the cabinet who represent these projects. And then, reconnecting communities, a study of Verdeco over I-90 in Chinatown. So all of this is a visual representation of how these projects make their way in the capital plan and how the revenue is divided to support the projects.
Okay, so now that we've financed the plan, how do we implement the plan? So this slide here depicts the steps of implementing a capital project and how it gets reflected in the plan. So the city tends to step into projects, starting with initial study, followed by design and community engagement, followed by construction and completion. The cost for a project in the plan can represent the anticipated expenditure at one or sometimes multiple stages of the implementation, but doesn't necessarily reflect the full cost of the project. As we revisit the plan annually, despite it being a 5-year plan, anticipated expenditures are updated and take into account any updated costs, updated timeline, and how it has advanced through this implementation steps, as well as the city's capacity to deliver in a given year. The city is committed to the projects that get published in the plan and intends to get to all of them, but like any budget or plan, there always are trade-offs as we move throughout the plan and move through these stages of implementation. In terms of who manages the capital plan, so overwhelmingly, much of the projects in the plan or the value of the projects in the plan are managed by our public facilities division, followed by our streets cabinet. In terms of number of projects that this represents, so public facilities we anticipate will be responsible for about 123 of the projects, the streets cabinet responsible for about 106, and works its way down throughout the graph. Categorized by type of project, so a significant part of the plan is for streets and infrastructure projects, followed by schools, environment and open space. Civic buildings includes both public library and BCYF projects. Central facilities includes some of our main city assets like City Hall, 1010 Mass Ave and Court Street. And then we have public health and safety, which includes EMS, police, and fire projects.
Okay, now we move into some of the more the project detail or components of the capital plan. So Boston Public Schools represents a significant portion of the capital plan, and some of the major projects listed here. So new construction or major renovations that are actively in progress include the Philbrick Sumner merger at the Irving Building, the Josiah Quincy Upper School, the Carter School, the P.J. Kennedy School, the Horace Mann School relocation, and other major projects in the pipeline is the Shaw Taylor School, invited into the Mass School Building Authority process. So that's an opportunity to leverage state funds that support the capital plan. The Madison Park Technical Vocational High School is in design. The recently renamed Ruth Batson Academy, previously the BCLA McCormick, is in an MSBA application process. And then in terms, so those are major discrete projects, but the Boston Public Schools does projects throughout the district-wide investments. So there's new investments, $8 million for pool repair and maintenance. We know as we make our way through this climate environment that how important pools are. $4 million to start design at the Blackstone and Holland pools. $26 million for bathroom renovations with 2 to 3 schools annually targeted for improvements. $10 million for security cameras and other improvements. And there are continued investments, $10 million for HVAC improvements across BPS to improve indoor air quality for the students. $6 million for schoolyard improvements at 5 schools, and a new $6 million additional investment for that program. So thematically moving from schools into other elements of the capital plan. So in the climate and green space, I think we're all well aware of the pressing environmental concerns that we're all dealing with. In the climate and green space, there's $75 million in the capital plan to leverage state and federal resources for planning and construction of a resilient coastline. There's $14 million for a renovation of Clifford Playground, $27 million in new capital funding for the creation and maintenance of various city parks. Then thematically in the grouping of public health and safety, there's $155 million to fund roadway resurfacing and sidewalk reconstruction throughout the city, $27 million for neighborhood-based street safety improvements, and $13 million to keep our fire engines up to date on a regular replacement schedule. And then moving into the thematic category of youth and families, there's $31 million for a new library in Fields Corner in Dorchester, $65 million for a new community center in Grove Hall, $54 million in investment in BCYF and BPS pools, again, pointed back to the pool nexus, and then delivering on exceptional city services. So, you know, how a city is seen both internally by its residents and its business, and also through in its visitors, how you provide city services. You know, in this $6 million upgrade for 311 to provide a higher level of service to every resident who contacts City Hall. There's also $197 million to keep our bridges, stairs, walking paths in a state of good repair. And we do want to take acknowledgement and take credit for all the team here that's done a lot of hard work on projects that have recently been completed in the last year. So the Faneuil Branch Library has recently reopened, the Curley Community Center has reopened, the Matt Hunt Community Center, the Paris Street Pool, the Ryan Play Area, the Bino Park, Walnut Park Play Area, Winthrop Playground, the Paulatitis Park, Adams School Roof and Mason Repairs, Malcolm X Park, Judge Gordine Park, Mass Ave south of Melniacast Bikeway, Dalton Street Bridge, the recently dedicated EMS training facility, Ruggles Street, Tremont Street, Center Street safety improvements, the Henderson Lower School windows, and the Lee Academy masonry repairs.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jim. So we'll wrap up here, and then we'll look forward to your questions. So this $4.7 billion 5-year plan both creates and maintains critical city-owned assets and infrastructure in every neighborhood. The capital plan, which is largely financed by GEO bonds, is, you know, as Jim mentioned, covering a lot of critical investments in the city and is financed under policies that are governed by our debt management policies. We evaluate and revisit this plan on an annual basis with you all, and we believe that a responsive capital plan really seeks and supports and enhances a well-run city. So with that, we look forward to your questions. I'm joined by many of my colleagues across the city, and thank you.
Thank you. Just want to acknowledge that we also been joined by Council Weber, Council Flynn, Council Fernandez-Anderson, Council Fitzgerald, and also Councilor Coletta. I'll now turn it over to my colleagues in order of arrival. You will have, I know capital planning is a topic we all care about, so I'll give everyone 8 minutes. Floor is now yours, Councilor Murphy.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the overview. You've touched on a lot of the questions I do have. And the capital budget, right, it's fun. We can build things, we can get things fixed, so new things are coming in. And, you know, it's a 5-year plan, so there's things that are new this year, but if anyone could touch on, it might be department specific, which projects do you think will be finished this year in this next capital budget? Are there projects that we're looking forward to completing?
I'll take that. So we'll be doing the JQS, that will be complete in June, July of this year. Carter will be complete also in this fiscal year. It's scheduled for April of 2025, or actually February. And I mean, there's a number of projects that will be in terms of, those are the top ones, but Engine 17, that will be done.
Is that Meeting House Hill?
That's Meeting House Hill.
Oh, I brought it down, okay.
That's June. And sorry, I can get you a full list.
No, that's good. Are there any that are in the pipeline but that have been slowed down or
Horace Mann,
not
too.
going to finish? Are there any that we're concerned that were presented to us in the past but now kind of stalled?
Well, we're looking at ones that are. Well, we're thinking of ones that are stalled. I can say Parks has 13 new parks coming online in this calendar year. So we have Copley Square downtown. We have Cotillo in the North End. We have Mother's Rest in Four Corners, Dorchester. We have McGann in Hyde Park. We have work at Millennium Park in West Roxbury. We have O'Day in the South End. We have Ramsey Ballfield, South End, Lower Roxbury. We have Clarendon Street Playground in Back Bay. We have Winthrop Street Park in Roxbury. We have Edna Bino in Roxbury. We have Paulatitis in Roxbury. And we have Crawford in Roxbury, all coming online in this calendar year.
That's exciting. Any projects costing more than we expected that we budgeted for?
All of them.
Maybe all of them, but to the point where, any to the point, or if all of them have, did it stop us from adding any new projects that were expected or we were hoping to get to? And is that due to like longer time or just construction costs going up across the board?
Yeah, I think sort of construction inflation is sort of pretty well known phenomenon. In terms of, you know, as we revisit the capital plan, the sizing of projects probably factors into the overall, size of the plan. But I don't think it impeded anything in particular.
And on the traffic, Chief Franklin Hodge, is there a breakdown, because I get a lot, and I know our colleagues do too, my colleagues do too, on safety, traffic calming measures. Is there a breakdown between how much of that amount, there was a slide of how much like your department is spending, how much is on bike lanes and how much are on like speed humps and safety traffic?
Yeah, so our various safety initiatives are split across multiple projects and programs, including some recurring annual programs as well as some place-specific projects. We also have, as was mentioned, a number of federal grants that are two Safe Streets for All grants, which are focused on safety improvements that will happen at neighborhoods or intersections throughout the city. So all of that is sort of in our capital budget. I will say almost every project we do is a safety project in one way or another. And so, I think the numbers you saw called out the things that are explicitly safety focused. But if we are doing a street reconstruction or a major change on a corridor, even if the primary goal is adding a bus lane, we are also making substantial safety improvements.
And I know that when we've talked, like, you would like to be able to put more speed humps in, we're phasing them in. Is there a push this year coming up that's increased from the last few years?
Yeah, there is. So the city, I got this stat recently from our engineers, but the city installed roughly 300 speed humps between 2016 and 2022. In 2023, the year alone, we installed about 300, and we are on track to install about 300 before the middle of 2024 and are continuing to accelerate that pace. So we have about $12 million of dedicated funding in the capital plan for speed humps. This was intended to be allocated over 3 years. We are trying to spend it as fast as we can. At this stage, it is adequate funding for what we believe our capacity is to deliver speed humps, but I hope to be back here next year asking you for more money to do more speed humps.
You've spent all the money we gave you in the first round. Well, I hope so too. Well, thank you, Chair. That's all for me.
Thank you, Council Murphy. Council President Louis Jen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the administration for being here. Thank you, everyone, for all of your work. The capital plan is important because it helps us see like how the city is, what we're envisioning, especially with respect to our schools. You know, the capital plan includes 72 projects and programs for our school buildings with a total budget of $1.2 billion. I want to understand how the plans that we have, the projects that we have for Boston Public Schools and this capital budget fits into our larger plan for BPS school buildings. I guess this question is for you, and how it fits into us trying to right-size the district.
Sure. Thank you, Council. The budget fits really nicely into our overall plans. We've worked really closely over the last 4 years to make sure that there's there's a lot of intentionality in doing the alignment. So with the funds, we're able to work on accreditation, schoolyard improvements, radiator covers, fire systems at various schools, drinking water upgrades, bathroom renovations, window repair replacement, for example. So we take all of that into consideration, and as we think about schools and which ones to keep on and offline, we're very intentional on kind of targeting the funds in that direction.
So all of the schools that are listed under the major projects, these are not schools that we would be looking to take offline?
Not for the foreseeable future, no.
And is that true too? We often are reviewing schools for MSBA funding, right? And oftentimes it's for HVAC, which is desperately needed across the district, in every neighborhood, in all of our schools. And I want to lift up all of those who have come before us really in that advocacy. So that if a school is coming before us for an MSBA upgrade, it means that for an MSBA repair, that it's not on a list of schools, it's not a potential school that will be closed by BPS.
It's a requirement that this school is active as a school in order to get funding from MSBA, yes.
That's not an answer, though.
Yes, it needs to stay, yes, it needs to stay open.
That it's good, and that it's not part of because we don't yet have the list and plan, and I'm not saying that we should, of schools that are slated to potentially, like, how we do the right sizing the right way, which means that there are some school buildings that are going to have to close. But it's not, my understanding is that we don't have that list yet.
No, we'll be discussing that more at the May 23rd hearing around what that would look like or could look like. But for now, the funds that are allocated or going towards MSBA, it is a requirement that those schools stay open.
Stay open for how long?
Oh, yeah, it's 20 years, yeah.
20 years. Oh, okay. So that isn't, okay, great. This is important just because I know so many of our schools were built before World War II, and 25% are 100 years or older. And so one of the things, and I mentioned this in yesterday's hearing, that it's great that we have the MSBA that provides us with state funding. There are cities that have their own, like, legal authority to do the reconstruction, rebuilding. I think Atlanta has a model, DC, New York. Have we as a district ever looked into creating or asking for state authority for creation of our own ability at the city level to have an entity that is responsible for new school construction and development?
Not to my knowledge.
I'm not sure if I understand the question, Council, only because that's public facilities oversees this all vertical construction in the city for any buildings. And it's under because we're under the statute of 149 and 149A. So in terms of, what type of authority?
Their own authority to, I guess, be the engine that pulls money from the state, their own authority to, like, bond issuance, to be able to construct new schools.
Well, Counselor, we do borrow for school projects here locally, so, we kind of functionally do that through our existing authority, so, but we haven't looked into anything kind of school specific.
Yeah, I asked just because, in New York, it's a New York City School Construction Authority. In Atlanta, it's Atlanta Public Schools through it has their own entity that is just devoted to school construction. I ask this because so many of our schools are crumbling, and I think maybe it is through public facilities, but that dedicated entity that is looking at our school buildings, when a parent is thinking about, which school do I choose for my child? Do I choose this public school? Do I choose this brand new shiny building? And we just haven't been investing enough. So I'm wondering if part of a solution is creating an entity that is solely devoted, even not saying it's great that we get money from MSBA, but an entity that is working solely on thinking about our school buildings and creating new ones where necessary.
I mean, I would just add that we do have that infrastructure currently in place, so we do work collaboratively to understand our buildings, our infrastructure, what the needs are by building, and work collaboratively with our city colleagues to identify what funding needs to go to which specific project. So in essence, we do function that way, although it may not be a recognized authority.
And if I could just add, without knowing about the New York City example or others, I mean, my sense is those probably have a dedicated source of revenue associated with them that, we, again, currently don't have here, and we, use general obligation bonds to fund school projects, but that could be a difference as well.
Okay, thank you. I also just want to harp on the other major schools that are in the pipeline, the Shaw Taylor, in the MSBA process, and the Ruth Batson Academy that we just supported the MSBA application. I want to continue to allow those as right steps forward, and just want to make sure that as we're having these conversations, I think that are really important around right sizing the school district, that we are getting the community process and engagement right. I think for the Ruth Batson Academy example, that one has been a long time coming. I'm glad to see that moving. And I think that there are so many opportunities where we fail at BPS to have these long-term conversations about what the buildings look like. So I'm wondering, when we are putting the MSBA application together, is there a community process in that process, and what does that look like?
Yeah, so We typically, prior to submitting the application, work closely with the school communities to let them know that we are intending to apply for MSBA, and we have communications, meetings about those things. And then once it does get into the MSB pipeline approval process, there's very intentional steps in that process to engage the community on the next steps of the project. So it's very intentional both at the MSBA side, and we work closely to do more communication up front as we intend to apply.
Okay, thank you. As this conversation goes, and we're gonna talk to BPS, so there'll be more opportunities for us to have this conversation, but just wanna get that out there right now. I'm excited to the investments in the capital budget that we're making on open space and recreation, things that we're preserving, like important parts in Hyde Park, like the George Wright Golf Course. I'm excited that we are really thinking about bridges and infrastructure. I also know in Hyde Park, the bridge, even though that's not under our authority, I don't know if there's any plan within our budget or allocation related to the bridge. And I know that Councilor Pepin also obviously cares about this.
You're talking about the River Street Bridge?
Yeah, and I know that's the state, but.
Yeah, it is a state project. The city is trying to play a little bit of a convening role around how we can accelerate the state's ability to construct that bridge. It has been largely constrained by the availability of work time because the bridge sits over an Amtrak track. So we are convening, trying to get local elected officials and state level elected officials to push Amtrak to work with MassDOT more aggressively to try to give them more time to do work and complete that project faster.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I know my colleagues will ask about whether the city looks at the neighborhood investments and does a comparison. There's some lopsidedness in some neighborhoods, and I know that my colleagues will get to that. I just want to thank all of you for being here, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me to ask these questions.
Thank you, Council President. Just want to acknowledge that we've also been joined by Councilor Santana, my Vice Chair, Pepin. The floor is now yours.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to the panelists for being here today. Very excited about the conversation. My first question is going to Chief Franklin Hodge. I do see that in the FY25 budget, there's a proposed $2 million for Wood Avenue. What's the expected timeline on that project?
So we have started community engagement on that project already. This project came about in part after the tragic death of Yvonne Pierre, a 4-year-old boy who was killed on that street last summer. We are looking at a series of changes that are constructed in nature. There had been some quick build, flex post and paint type improvements that were made, but we know that that street needs more. So the community engagement has started on that process, and I think the expectation is that we will have designs that are towards the end of this calendar year, looking likely at construction, at best case end of this year, but likely into next year.
Thank you. And also in regards to a very similar project, Cummins Highway, right next to Wood Ave. When are we expecting to have that project completed?
I believe that will be at least 2 years of construction. It is starting now. So we we met with community leaders earlier this week to go over last week to go over some of the project details and the scheduling. But that's likely going to be a roughly 2-year construction schedule. Once we get underway, we'll have a clearer sense of whether there are any unanticipated challenges with utilities or rock or other things. It's kind of a complicated area for us to be working, but we're moving ahead with that.
Thank you. Last week I met with the Cummins Highway Neighborhood Association, and they requested a schedule of the construction, if possible, so they can share with residents to know that, so that they can make them aware of what work is being done on what stretch of Cummins Highway.
Yeah, I believe that team members, including the head of our construction management team, did go and meet with that association last week. I know they are looking for a more detailed schedule and another presentation likely in May. So we will be keeping in regular touch with them and providing updates on the website about construction schedule.
Thank you, Chief. For Commissioner Woods, very excited about the McGowan Playground almost opening. Do we have an exact timeline or expected month when that will open up?
It will be early summer, probably June. We're just waiting for dates from the mayor's scheduling office to try to figure out a big celebration out there. But excited to have that open right next to George Wright Golf Course. It's a long time needed repair, so we're excited for that one to come back online.
Thank you. Yeah, the parents are definitely excited for that one. And I'm not sure if this one falls for you. It's regarding the Matterhorn Woods preservation. I do see that there is an investment for the trail redesign and the use of open space. at the Manhattan Woods Preservation. Also the Cummins Highway Neighborhood Association, they expressed interest in being part of the planning for the trails, just to make sure that they get to see something that they would like to see on the trail. So if possible, include them in the conversation when the time is right.
Yes, and that's a partnership with the Environment Department as well, so I'll make sure I engage with them, and we can bring you an update on our May 20th hearing to tell you where we are on that.
Thank you. For Director Griffin, it's good to see you here. This is regarding the investment going into the Hyde Park Municipal Building. So I do see that there is $1 million for interior and exterior renovations in the FY25 capital budget. But I've heard that there was $3 million set aside for the redesign of the park and the splash pad outside of that community center. Do we know if that money is still there, or is that part of the $1 million that we're talking about in this capital budget?
The park and splash pad would be, well, actually, it's school property, right? No, it's community center. No, I'm not sure, Counselor, but I can find out.
Okay. I believe it was in the previous, my predecessor had that conversation in regards to the $3 million for that redesign there. And then for Superintendent DePina, it's good to see you here. In regards to the merger of the Philbrook and Summer School, I see that there is $91 million set aside for this. We're excited for this because you're renovating the Washington Irving School in Rosnell and bringing those two schools together. What is the expected timeline on the completion of the Irving School?
Actually,
Let's go.
Chief Griffin.
So anticipated for September 2025. It's a lot of work to do in a short time, but right now that's how it was procured to be. We just turned over the swing space for the children, so that we'll be starting construction probably in a month.
Okay.
And the work is progressing along nicely. We're working collaboratively with staff and schools, and they seem to be doing okay at the site.
Great. And when you say September 2025, are you expecting to have the first day of school for
Yes.
2025? Well, that's exciting. All right. Thank you, but that's my question for now.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Now we'll go to Councilor Braden.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. Good to see you all. We have a lot of, District 9, Alston Brighton, has a lot of projects sort of in the list. I'm not worried about the fact that we don't have new projects, but we have a lot of projects that are at various stages of they're in the list, but they're not going anywhere. And they've been in the list, come with phase 3, 4, it's like that. I don't even know when that's going to happen, not anytime soon, because we're depending on other agencies, I think. But just is there, how do we advance projects and make sure that they keep moving? Because we have Rogers Park Phase 1. I know we did a master plan study over there, but the master plans are almost 10 years old at this stage. And I appreciate, Commissioner Woods. We're working hard with parks to find additional funds to support some of these projects. So, and I know how hard you folks are working to get project managers in place, but it's really frustrating, and my community is getting really impatient that we're not seeing any action. So, any thoughts on that matter?
Yeah, we're trying to get the extra, we have a project manager, we're trying to get the extra funding nailed down for McKinney to move forward with the McKinney project. As you know, a light pole fell down last week with the strong winds in McKinney as well, so that's a very urgent need for us, as well as we're in the middle of designs for Ringer and Hardeman. So both of those have a project manager assigned. They're just in the community process as we move forward.
The Ringer Park project, for the longest time we said, the Ringer Park, we can't make a decision about Ringer Park because we have to figure out what's happening with the BCYF Community Centre and what's happening with the schools. Mm-hmm. So is that still that sort of synergy? Is that still part of the conversation? Like, we can't just advance the park and not consider what's happening at the BCYF Centre and the schools?
we're going to advance the park more.
Yeah,
Yeah,
'cause
it
we've
still
been-
is a
we've been-
collaboration to, with the building that's there. We want to make sure the right programs are there, but we are going to advance sections of the park, likely phased approach to different sections since it is a large park.
Yeah.
But we are going to move
I
forward.
think the locals who know and folks who've worked in Parks Department that are retired now said that the last time that park had any really significant investment was in the White administration, so it's past time. Let's see. The Jackson Man School Study was a new project in financial year 21. $500,000 were devoted to that. Do we know where we're at with the Jackson Man community, like a new elementary school for Alston Brighton? That one for you, Mr.
Yeah.
DePina.
No, my understanding is that it is in design. We're in the design phase. So, I'm sorry.
No. We completed the study
Yeah.
for the, for K through 6 and with the community center. And that's
That's the extent of it.
right.
Yeah.
So the
So
study's been
I'm just curious because that was financial year 2021. This is 2025, 4 years ago. Like, what new data are we using? What tools are we using to evaluate the changing circumstances in the neighbourhood? Like, Faneuil Gardens is going to double in size. We're going to have a lot more kids, hopefully, in the neighbourhood. I'm just thinking, like, sometimes these studies are done, and by the time you actually move to do implementation, it's old news.
No, when we start, the study's a good tool to get us a conceptual budget, but also to a program, which is the key. We always validate that when we start design. So we would take whatever, we studied and then validate that, whether that's still true.
So is the Jackson Man new elementary school in design at this point?
It's not in design.
No.
It's
You're doing a program.
Study.
the study's complete.
Yeah, study complete.
Okay, so when might we accept some next steps?
I think on our end, it's part of the broader work around the Green New Deal and looking at everything and prioritizing what we can get done. So we'll have more understanding down the line.
So the Horace Mann School for the Deaf, the regional school, I call it a regional school because it's serving 23, 24 school communities outside Boston. It's going to be relocated. Is it still on target to go to Charlestown this fall?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, excellent. And then last year, when we did ARPA funds a few years ago, we earmarked $1 million for BCYF to relocate as part of preparing the temporary location for the Jackson Man Community Centre. We anticipated it would probably go to Brighton High School, but we didn't know where it was going to land, but we left it open. But we got $1 million to prepare, and the one space then in the new community centre, or the temporary community centre, would be the auditorium in Brighton High School. Are we able to use some of that money or get extra money to upgrade the auditorium in the high school? Because it's like the Jackson Man Community Centre is probably going to be there for 8 to 10 years, given the speed at which we build new facilities.
Yeah, we'll continue to, as we do the transition, support the community center as much as we can. So we'll go over the needs, we'll go over the space, and we'll make it as comfortable as possible for everyone using it.
Yeah. Horace Mann, Jackson Man. And just understanding, I appreciate we have a lot of projects in the works, but some of them have been in the works for, as long as I've been in this position, 5 years. It's just really frustrating that we don't actually get anything across the line. So is there a way that, needs must, if there's an emergency situation like the Clockery Pool, like the Jackson Man Community Centre is the only BCYF community centre we have, the only one. We're the second largest district in the city. We're the second largest by area and population, and yet we are really struggling to get any priority to, make sure that we move ahead smartly with preparing and building a new community centre. It's like we always come in, at the end of the heap. And it's really, really frustrating that it's like other districts are getting their 7th community centre, and we're trying to get temporary space for the one we have that we're losing, and then some priority to build a new one. Like, how do we handle that situation?
Yeah, we'll continue to work and progress with our plans as possible. That being a shared site, it's just cause a little bit more complexity because we have to work on it collaboratively together. So we'll, again, accommodate them as best we can on a temporary site, but once we do finalize plans for the overall BPS facilities capital planning work.
So we might expect that when we sit here next year that we'll be talking about a project that's much further on in the process.
We could be, yes, we could be.
I know Chief Franklin Hodge, the Commonwealth Ave project, and it'll take as long as it takes. I think it's a big project because you're working with other agencies, MBTA, and MBTA has a lot on their plate right now. But when might we expect the next phases of Commonwealth Ave to move forward?
Yeah, I don't think at this point we have a clear date from the MBTA about the advancing into construction. There is some short-term accessibility work that they're doing this year, but very small projects designed to improve some of the worst crossing areas. The long-term reconfiguration of Commonwealth Ave, they have picked up the planning again after a long hiatus, and so we're optimistic about that. And I will note that this capital budget sets aside approximately $10 million for the city to supplement projects that would be constructed by the MBTA to ensure that features that are important to the city, which may be less important to the transit agency, are able to be funded. So there is a pool of funding that we can use to, for example, ensure that we're designing streets that are beautiful and accessible and safe, not just the T's work focused on the transit areas. So we're working closely with them. I don't have a timeline yet for when we might see that move into construction, but I'm optimistic now that they are engaging with it again.
Very good. Thank you. I've got more questions, but my time's up for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Braden. Councilor Durkin?
Thank you so much, Chair. I have so many questions, and this is such an exciting hearing, so thank you all for being here. And thank you to the Chair for conducting so many productive conversations today and yesterday. As we consider what's possible across our city by capital funds, I wanted to dig into a few of the plans for my district, specifically timelines around which this money was allocated. I don't expect you'll have the information right now, but I'm hoping to understand what fiscal year the projects within my district were first appropriated in capital funds. I understand and admire the fact that capital funds are forward-looking, but recognize that one of the projects in my district is nearly 2 decades beyond its original appropriation. So wanted to understand and get a better sense, and appropriately, there's a lot of building and other things happening around, so I can understand why we would wait on some of this, but just, for the clarity of my constituents, wanted to get an idea of, so we have 121 million allocated for District 8 in the capital budget. Wanted to also get into, with the city, with the planning department moving underneath the city, can we get into more detail about how external funds are allocated within the current capital budget? How might this be different from previous years prior to the creation of the city planning department? Residents in my district are no stranger to forcefully advocating for mitigation through the Article 80 review process, which often does not make its way to the community. I don't believe that mitigation and community benefits granted through individual cooperation agreements are tracked down by the Boston Planning and Development Agency currently. So now that the city planning department is under the city, will this function create change, and will we be able to track revenue totals for external funds? Obviously, given the total for District 8 and this year's capital funds, it's clear that a lot of our money does come from mitigation, so I wanted to ask that question, and I know we're all very familiar with a lot of the work that is being done.
I can take a stab at that. So just at a very high level, most of the plan is obviously funded with general obligation bonds. So most of the projects you see here are funded through that mechanism unless there's a specific grant for a specific project. In terms of mitigation, I think, yes, there are a lot of opportunities to improve that tracking and utilization of those funds now that the functions are coming over to the city. So working really closely with colleagues in the BPDA. I know there's a very thoughtful effort going around Article 80 modernization and updating, and how we can create some more predictability and structure around those mitigation funds, so we have a better sense of how many there are and how they're being used.
Thank you. And I will send any of my questions around some of these, but I'm really excited to see a lot of money for the parks. Thank you so much, Commissioner, for everything you do. Wanted to ask you a question about, I see there are many projects related to the Boston Common Master Plan, and so I was just curious how you see the phasing going for the implementation of the Boston Common Master Plan, and I'm grateful to the capital budget as one of the members of the Boston Common Maintenance Trust Fund alongside our CFO. Just wanted to, highlight how important this money is, and wanted to get an idea of how we are phasing the Boston Common Master Plan into implementation.
Sure. So the good thing with Boston Common is with the Winthrop Square funds, we do have that $23 million that we're able to tap into to move forward on projects. So we're excited in phase one. We're doing an expansion of the Tadpole Playground. So that playground is so small for the amount of kids that it serves. So it will grow a little. We're also doing all improvements around the Frog Pond. And for the exciting thing, up by the Shaw 54th, for the first time, the Beacon Street side of the park will be accessible. So there'll be a switchback ramp that comes in, because right now, if you are disabled, you cannot get into the park from the Beacon Street side to America's First Park. So that will be our early action items. And also with the Maintenance Trust, the exciting thing is we're able to fix the non-attractive things such as the sinkholes, the potholes, all the different problems throughout. So we're going to continue to do that every year.
Thank you so much, and thank you again for everything you do for our parks. And I want to thank also the advocacy of the Friends of the Public Garden. I think without their leadership and without some of their investments, we wouldn't be able to do and engage in these huge projects. So thank you so much. Wanted to, Chief Franklin Hodge, talk a little bit about Boylston Street sidewalks. Which blocks of Boylston, I know this is an annual program, so can you talk a little more about the annual program? And I know the plan was to do sort of one block of Boylston Street per year, and I know we missed last year, so I was curious if this upcoming year we would have money to do 2 blocks of Boylston, or what that would look like and how that annual program is playing out.
Yeah, so as you noted, it is an annual program to go block by block. Last year, the issue we ran into was the contractor we had selected to do the work was debarred by the state, and we were forced to rebid that contract along with a number of other projects. We are moving ahead with the D to C block, Dartmouth to Clarendon, this year, and that will likely start in the coming months. At this point, we are focusing on continuing to do 1 block this year. There is a little bit of a bonus this year because of all of the great work that the Parks Department is doing at Copley Square Park. Typically, we've only done one side of 1 block, but there will be work happening on both sides of that block this year because of the work that the Parks Department is doing to improve the sidewalks and the edges there. So that is happening, and then we will continue to treat this as an annual program with 1 block per year.
Thank you so much, and I won't belabor the Back Bay Bicycle Network because I know we have a public meeting on May 2nd, and I know we'll be meeting regarding that. But I just want to thank your leadership in listening to residents. I think we've made some good progress on that, and just want to thank you for your work there, and hope we can continue to stay collaborative as we, focus on making sure that these capital funds are spent to protect the safety of all road users.
Thank you, Councillor, and all credit goes to my team for that, but we really appreciate the collaboration that we've had with you on this as well. So thank you.
And I wanted to get into a little bit the Kenmore block I just want to say to Commissioner Woods, thank you so much for advocating for the Kenmore block to get funds. I know this was a huge this was something that was really being advocated for from my office, but also the advocates were really pushing for this. So thank you so much for your advocacy and the Kenmore block of the ComAv Mall. I don't know much about Engine 37 and the design and construction of a new fire station in Kenmore. So can anyone talk a little more about that?
That, we don't have a project for,
It says to be scheduled.
oh,
So that I didn't know, it's under Fenway, but I don't know that it should be under Fenway, so I'm curious if it's a mistake.
I think that's been in the plan for a while, but, and there was some talk about some development with Wentworth at that corner. I think that's Engine 37 at that corner. But that is not, we're not in design or anything on that project.
Oh, good. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't completely out of the loop
No.
because it was on here. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilor Durkin. Councilor Weber?
Thank you, Chair. Let's see. I'll start off with a couple questions about bridges. Long Island Bridge, what is the timeline and what's happening there?
Yeah, let's do this one. So I think so Long Island Bridge, as you probably know, is a long-standing project which has run into quite a bit of back and forth in the permitting process with our neighboring municipality. Although we are close, we still have, I believe, 3 permits that need to be granted to us before we can advance towards construction of that project. We are expecting to see movement on that this year, but we continue to be focused on getting the project fully permitted. In the meantime, it is in the capital budget, and so we do have funds allocated to allow us to advance towards construction when we're ready to do so.
So I guess ballpark figure, trying.
I would be getting myself into trouble if I was to sort of estimate when the Coast Guard and various state agencies will move on the permitting piece of this. So.
Okay. Are we moving forward on the facilities part?
I'll let my colleagues speak to that.
So the current plan, and others stop me if I'm getting this wrong, but the buildings on the island, there is money allocated in the capital plan to stabilize the buildings. So there is funding set aside and anticipated for the building work.
Okay. Thanks. And back to Chief Franklin Hodge, sorry. The bridge on Belgrade Avenue. Do you know what the timeline is? Do you know, will it be closed to traffic during construction?
Yeah, so the Belgrade Ave bridge on West Roxbury Parkway is, of course, a state bridge that on a DCR parkway that goes over MBTA rail tracks that is to be reconstructed by MassDOT, so we get the trifecta in this project. My understanding is that they are advancing towards final design. They expect to bid it this year and go into construction next year. There likely will be closures associated with that. We've not gotten an exact construction schedule, but they've indicated, MassDOT has indicated that they intend to try to push construction towards the summer months when there is lower traffic volumes on that street. And we will certainly be working very closely with them and with DCR around mitigation and construction management planning. I do understand that they're intending to use what are known as accelerated bridge construction techniques for that project. And so, again, while we don't have a formal construction schedule yet, it is our hope that they, and our expectation that they're working to minimize the amount of time when that roadway might be shut down or lanes may be shut down.
And just for West Roxbury residents, around summer 2025?
Correct.
Expected?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and a couple questions about schools. Yesterday there was a play structure at the Curley School that kind of fell apart. Can you just walk me through what is the inspection or maintenance? Who's in charge of making sure those play structures don't?
Sure. We have our grounds crew and our team in our facilities department that constantly go by and monitor and check our infrastructures. Unfortunately, that was just an unfortunate circumstance where it started to collapse, but our team was immediately there. We were able to remove the structure, remove any safety concerns, and that was resolved yesterday afternoon within hours of it first being being discovered.
Okay, and so that's the BPS handles that?
Yes.
Okay, and they, as they did yesterday. Okay,
Yes.
thank you very much. Okay, and so there's money in the budget allocated for West Roxbury High School. And I guess, I don't know if this is for Chief Grauenberger or you. I don't know, what is the difference between something that is in design and to be scheduled? What, because the West Roxbury High is listed in the to be scheduled. I don't know what that means.
So that project now is basically on hold. There are funds available, but right now we're not sure what BPS is going to utilize the building for. So to be scheduled is based on having more information, I think I would say.
Okay, yeah, so there's no plans, the money's being held, so there would be some decision about whether
That's right.
it's going to be a school and what it's going to be, okay. And so something, we talked about schools closing. My kids went to the Mission Hill School where, we were told in May that the school is closing for the following year. And so I've been advocating, for at least a fair amount of notice for families who are going to be in this process. My understanding is that, and you talked about presenting more information about which schools might be, I'm just going to say closed, but consolidated, whatever the words are I'm supposed to use, in May, but that when you notify families or that a school will be closed, that it won't be closed until after the following school year. Is that correct?
So what we've learned and what we're moving towards is positioning ourselves so that there's ample notice to both central office folks and schools and communities about when and how we close. In the past, we have done them abruptly for different reasons, different circumstances, but the goal now is to have plenty of runway so people can plan and have a lot of time to process what's going on and move towards implementation. I'm just,
so when in May, when if there are schools that are going to be closed, will those schools remain open for the entire following year?
Yeah, right. We wouldn't anticipate anything to close for this upcoming school year. So anything that would happen for school year 25.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just as a parent who went through that, I fully support giving a year for families to prepare, make plans, look at other schools, move, whatever, it takes. So as much lead time as you can give families, I think that would be great. Sorry, so for Commissioner Woods, can you, sorry, that's 6 minutes, just to, don't cut me off yet. Can you just, what is the plan for maintenance of Jamaica Pond?
In terms of extra maintenance outside of our routine maintenance that we do in all parks?
Yes, yeah, I think there was Councilor O'Malley, there was a few $1 million put into the pond, I think, 4 or 5 years ago.
$4.7 million went into repaving all the pathways around the pond,
Yeah.
and then maintenance is on our staff. So our staff goes in there, empties trash barrels, fixes problems. We have a drainage issue currently when we get heavy rain as it comes down from the homes and stuff across the street. So we're looking into fixes there, but besides that, there's no maintenance plan other than our routine daily maintenance that we operate at the park.
Okay, well, just, I think going around the pond, you can see things that need maintenance. Maybe we could talk about that. But in the budget, there's money for a JP Boathouse study. Can you explain what that is?
Just studying the structure of the building just to make sure it's an old building. So we had to make bathrooms improvements and things of that nature, but just the stability of the building. So we have a firm on that constantly watches that.
And apparently there's a museum under the bandstand. I didn't know that, but it's never been opened.
So it's opened by our park rangers. It's a taxidermy. It's animals and stuff that were found, and the rangers do educational programs in there with groups of that. But it's an internal, not a museum per se, but a programming opportunity from the park rangers.
Well, it'd be great if those could be open, to the public more often. Can you? I've gotten a lot of contact from the pickleball community, which is apparently, is infinite size and people playing. Is there any plans to keep lights on, at we have tennis courts on South Street, lights on throughout the winter?
So Mayor Wu extended utilities to allow us to have lighting that used to shut off October 30th every year. This was the first year they were on until December 1st, so we added that extra month. Our parks do go dawn to dusk from December 1st all the way till April 1st. We shut down all of our utilities all of our electricity goes on vacation mode. So across the city, all lights are shut off, but South Street Mall is the last court with lights shut off, and they are the first one turned on every single year.
Okay, but have you looked at a pilot program to keep those lights on?
Well, we piloted to add an extra additional month, so this was the very first year we did it. I think we continue to look at that, but right now we do it go dawn to dusk from December 1st till April 1st, so people are still allowed to use it during the daytime hours. It's just once the lights are on, they're not on a timer, so that means when it snows, it's lights. We have lights on when nobody's using the courts as well. So for energy efficiency reasons, we do the December 1st till April 1st.
Okay, thank you. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Council Weber. Council Flynn, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the administration team that's here. Also want to recognize the work of the Director of Public Facilities, Kerry Griffin, for working closely with the City Councilors over many years. You worked with me on the Curly Recreation Center. Just want to acknowledge your team's professionalism. Couple things on District 2 I want to go right into. The Blackstone School pool, renovating of the pool, $2 million. I had the opportunity to visit the pool maybe 2 weeks ago. I know it's a new project as part of the budget. What impact will that have on the potential of building a new Blackstone school as well?
When and if we do additional investments at the school, we'll have to work around the pool regardless. So we want to prioritize the pool to get that up and running as quickly as possible, and then the broader plans will work around that with the rest of the building.
So the Blackstone school pool will have $2 million invested in it, and then the school itself would be under construction to build a new Blackstone school.
We're still exploring what that would look like and when that would look like.
Okay. When I visited the school a couple of weeks ago, it was in critical need of repair, as you know. Let me go on to Engine 3 in the south end, the Boston Fire Department on Harrison Avenue. I know it's in design. Can I get an update on that?
Sure, Councilor. It is we are doing, the designer RFQ is out, so we're in design selection. Once we have the designer on board, we will start designing. We'll start working with the fire department.
Okay. Chief Franklin Hodge, I do know that Chinatown sidewalks are part of the design plan that we have, $3 million. As you know, the sidewalks in Chinatown are in rough shape, especially for our seniors and persons with disabilities. What is the status of that?
So that project is moving into the early stages of design. There's a few elements to it, one of which has been the work that the city has been doing to develop a playbook for addressing issues associated with areaways. These are structures built off of buildings under sidewalks and which are very common in Chinatown and create a great deal of complexity for doing sidewalk repair in that neighborhood. So the city has been working in a collaborative cross-departmental way to build a playbook for how to deal with areaways that occur underneath sidewalks in need of repair. And we have a better toolkit now than we have had in the past for doing that. There is an additional, I believe, $2.5 million allocated in this capital plan for Chinatown sidewalks specifically. We are also in receipt of a Reconnecting Communities grant to do planning for Chinatown connections of the parts of Chinatown that are split by the Mass Pike. Those projects are being done, the planning and community engagement for those efforts are being done together as a joint effort so that we can make sure we're taking a holistic look at the neighborhood and making design decisions and approaches to those projects that reflect the community's priorities and needs. So that is moving forward into planning and design now.
Thank you. I do know that when I'm in Chinatown, a lot of the residents, especially the elderly persons with disabilities, have to literally walk in the street because the sidewalks are in disrepair on Beach Street, as you know. The South Boston Branch Library Study to be scheduled. What's the latest on that, please?
Yes, Council, we'll assign that for this in July. We have capacity to assign that.
Okay. I want to follow up on a couple of my colleagues mentioned the HVAC systems throughout BPS, $10 million citywide. That's an issue I've been focused on for the last 7 years. How significant is this challenge facing the students in BPS, and is this enough funding for BPS so that this issue is dealt with effectively?
We work on our HVAC system through both a combination of operating funds as well as capital investments. Obviously, we could always use more money, but we're sensitive to the fact that there's only so much to go around. So with this allocation, we are able to do a lot of work, and with our operating dollars, we are able to maintain a lot of HVAC systems. We also rely on a grant that we received to do more work on the schools that we have not been able to install air conditioners in as well, so we're working on that. So we are taking a variety of approaches to make sure that there's thermal comfort as well as HVAC working appropriately in our schools. So yes, I think the funding is appropriate for now, and as we need more funds, we'll discuss that and do whatever trade-offs we feel are necessary within the capital budget.
I know thank you. I know new construction, major renovations actively in progress, certainly the Josiah Quincy Upper School, also the Carter School. How's the Carter School doing?
It's doing great, Councillor. It's we just had a One Boston Day event that we did with the students and with Mark O'Connor, and we did it at the Lyra Frederick. We've been doing it for 8 years, but it's coming along awesome.
That's excellent. I think it's one of the best construction projects that's ongoing, and one of the best schools in the city of Boston, helping so many children, so many students with special needs, supporting their families as well. They receive money from the state for a therapeutic pool. Yes. to help the children exercise. How is that pool going?
Excellent. Great. I mean, the project is going fantastic. It's on schedule. It's, the really collaborative team, designer, architect, contractor, general contractor. It's a special project, and I agree, one of my favorites too.
Thank you. And finally, I just wanted to echo what Councilor Braden said on the Horace Mann School, critical asset, critical school, helping so many students, and I support whatever proposal there is. I believe it's moving to Charlestown. I know children with hearing challenges will greatly benefit from an exceptional school like the Horace Mann. What's the update on that school?
That will be this September for our opening. We plan on turning it over to the school department in August.
What will be significant about that school? Is there anything that's that we should know about that's significant or newsworthy?
It's a great update to a very old building in terms of all the mechanical systems, PA system, you know, the fire alarm with that will also have that links into the TV screens. So there's, you know, wayfinding, it's a lot of sound attenuation. No, it's a nice project. I mean, it's a big building, and we've made the money go far in that building, you know, but it's nice, another nice project.
And all the work that's being done is really accommodating to the academic program and that's needed for students as well, and staff.
What is the,
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Councilor Fernandez, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you. Chief Yasha, you must be really excited. I'm excited for you. This is like amazing. It's very exciting to be a Bostonian today, this year, and the next 5 years. So I actually went through it. It's interesting to sit here because then I can actually like go through everything. Oh, what a relief. But I'm really excited for you. Amazing plans. Absolutely, I second what I said yesterday. Like, amazing work in terms of like spreading the money and balancing things out. Of course, I'll have like deeper questions as we go into the budget process. Most of my questions are about, you know, timelines in terms of District 7. I do appreciate Chief and the Mayor for having increased District 7's investment this year by 95 million, over 95.5, in terms of new bonds or new monies coming in. So, and I'm not sure what that looks like overall in time, because sometimes things get stalled for different reasons. So if you don't have a timeline specific to projects, for me, it's just in District 7, where are we? And I think, Commissioner, we had talked before in parks, and you had actually created a spreadsheet with some timelines, and you gave me like what in design, what's in actual implementation and development, and I really appreciated that. So, Chief, I think I'm looking for sort of a spreadsheet of the capital investments in District 7. I think we can just go back about 3 to 4 years and look at where we are in implementation or design, and just sort of like color coordinate things for me, if that's okay with you, so that I can do my part in hopefully being supportive to departments in terms of following up and communicating back to constituents about projects in District 7. For questions, I did have some, and I'll probably only have time to ask a couple. Regarding Franklin Park Circuit, drive safety improvements. How will the design incorporate both safety enhancements and stormwater management to ensure sustainability of the project?
So fortunately, unfortunately, Circuit Drive is the one road that the Parks Department oversees in the city of Boston, not Chief Franklin Hodge on this one. So as you can imagine, the drainage system and pipes underneath Franklin Park are hundreds of years old, so some of them have collapsed. We've learned over time, thanks to Boston Water and Sewer helping us out with all the heavy stormwater and rain flow that we've gotten in. So it's drainage improvements mostly, and to fix some curbing and stuff along Circuit Drive. It's just there's certain areas when it rains you cannot past that road at all. So it's mostly a drainage focused, adding more drains where they need to be and seeing where all the runoff is coming. We get runoff from the zoo, we get runoff from the golf course, so making sure we're strategic on the placements.
Thank you, that's very helpful. And in terms of the dog park project, really interested in that. And I know there's like, you know, different opinions about this in terms of smell and things like maintenance and stuff like that, where do we put it, but really love that this is happening in District 7. How will the site selection process ensure equitable access for all residents in D7, especially considering diverse needs of both dog owners and those interested in tennis facilities.
So we're going to have a robust community process around that, and we're going to have some areas that we're going to propose that we think it may fit in. We try to make sure that we don't have, and the good thing about Franklin Park, have abutters that are within 50 to 100 feet or so from a dog park, just for the smells, the barking, things of that nature.
Yeah.
So we're going to propose certain areas and get that feedback to see what the best area in the park is that will be most accessible for everyone to get to use the dog park.
Great, sounds good. Thank you. The design improvements for Peabody Circle and Franklin Park aim to create a welcoming and functional park entrance while coordinating with Transportation Action Plan. Can you elaborate on how these improvements will promote both equity and sustainability with the park?
So right now, PBD Circle is owned by the state. So the Mass Office of Travel and Tourism has it under the care and control of the zoo. So we're working with the zoo to see if we can get that land transferred back over, because that is the front entryway for the Franklin Park Action Plan. That is your entryway into Franklin Park. So we're trying to make sure that it is programmed. It's a spot that we want to keep grassy spot, work on eliminating certain areas of parking there and adding more opportunities in other areas to park in the park, but really making that grand entryway into Franklin Park.
Thank you so much. So Lower Roxbury safety improvements, how will the project address the needs of pedestrian, cyclist, and motorist while ensuring inclusivity and accessibility of all residents, particularly considering the installation of bike lanes? So we know there are different opinions here. I'm a fan of bikes. I think that's obviously the future. But we have a community that, some communities in Boston that have been historically disenfranchised and therefore less, or let me take it back, with lifestyles that are less accommodating or flexible in terms of their job and daily lives, and how they could actually transition to more climate-resistant mode of transportation. I guess, with that question, but also like considering all of these other ways and how do we mitigate, or how do we ready the community to get to where we need them to get to?
Yeah, so, just happy to talk a little bit specifically. I mean, there's a broader question there, but I'll focus specifically on the Lower Roxbury work. That design work is complete, and what I will say with that is it is primarily focused on pedestrian safety, that project. So it involves reconstruction of many intersections in the Lower Roxbury area to create curb bump outs, raised crosswalks, to essentially make it easier for people to be seen, to slow cars down when they're making turns across places where people may be walking. I believe that there is what's known as a contraflow bike lane that's planned for Northampton Street as part of that project. And that is not a bike lane that is likely to have a significant impact on anyone else's use of the street. It's really a combination of traffic calming and a marked area for allow bikes to move in two directions on a street that is wide enough today to accommodate it without substantially changing parking or other major design elements of the street. So most of that project is not bike focused, and we do not believe the impacts from the bike elements of that project will be significant for residents who do not ride or cannot ride. There will be some loss of parking associated with the pedestrian safety improvements at intersections, but as we always do, we've tried to minimize that, but still ensuring we're giving pedestrians what they need.
Oh, it's almost like you rehearsed that. It was so great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilor Fernandez-Anderson. Councilor Fitzgerald, you have the floor.
There we go. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, administration, for coming today. I'll jump right, a couple quick questions. I've noticed for some of the school projects, just for my clarification, are school projects the ones that are in the capital budget? Do those happen, does the city do a faster process than MSBA, and is that why we will take some things from the schools and maybe not go for MSBA funding and do it in the city instead, is because we think we have a clearer path? I'm not as familiar with the MSBA process, so
Yeah, so there's an eligibility period for the MSBA. Even like for the Shaw Taylor, we'll know, That's not approved yet. We'll start the eligibility this summer. So there is, you usually add a year or two on if it's an MSBA.
Okay. I get you. A year or two longer than what the city process would be.
What the city process.
Gotcha. I appreciate that. Jumping all over the place here, the Harrison Avenue improvements, I know the South End folks love to constantly ask, as they have the right to, about what the timeline is on that. I know that there's other utility construction going on, but do we have any idea?
Yeah, at long last, that project is finally finished engineering. We have a complete set of construction documents, and I believe it is slated to be bid this spring. I don't have an exact construction timeline for you yet, but I can get that for you. It is moving ahead. We do expect it to happen. I know people have been very patient waiting for that work, and we are trying to advance it into construction, hopefully this year.
No, that's great news. I hope so. Let me know how I can be helpful, if anything, to that. I know, and right around the corner, Traveler Street, it is in design in this year's capital plan, but I compared to last year's capital plan, and it was under construction last year, in last year's capital plan. I was just wondering how it went from under construction to in design, because I don't know if that's just a typo or if it's a different project, but Or did we start construction and we're going back to redesign? I just didn't know what
I'm actually not seeing it on my capital sheet, so I may need to look
Washington
into
Street / Traveler Street. Sorry, to be more specific, Washington Street / Traveler Street.
That is a good question. I don't have an answer off the top of my head for that, but I'm happy to look at that and get back to you on that.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Also, Chief Franklin Hodge, I know we've talked about this briefly a while ago, but the speed hump strategy, I just want to make another plug for, I think it would be great to work with each city councilor, have them give you the 15 most needed roads that need speed humps in their district and prioritize those. I think it's a great win for everybody, for the mayor, for the administration, for the city councilor as well. I know we talked about if you do it in blocks for a reason, and that's so you don't just do one road and that people just avoid that road and it creates a havoc on the next street over. But I still think it's a way to touch everybody because everywhere we go, and I know my colleagues will say the same, that's what we get asked for, it's what you get asked for all the time. But we'd love to work with you in trying to identify which streets are the most, that we should prioritize and at least do those. So folks that sometimes feel somewhat touched and don't have to be on that waiting list for 3 years wondering when their speed humps are going to come, right?
Yeah.
But just a plug.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that. Happy to work with you on.
No problem. The Fields Corner Library, I don't know if there was a timeline on the Fields Corner Library.
Yes, that's going out to bid right now.
Great.
It's 100% designed.
All right, so it goes out to bid. So if
It's about 6 weeks, maybe a little longer than that because it's pre-qualification filed sub-bid. So probably about 2 months to 3.
To start when would it start construction?
Before we get bids in. Just due to the fact anything over 10 million, you have to do it pre-qualified before you actually bid it.
Okay.
So we've started the pre-qualification process for all 18 trades, filed sub-bids, and general contractors. So it takes a substantial amount of time to do this process.
Yep, thank you.
But it will be this year.
It will start construction this year?
It will start construction.
Great. It's great to see. I know that compared to last year, the investment in Clifford Park was doubled from 7 to 14 million. So I think that's great to see. I also saw there's other money set aside in the lights, the athletic lights and things like that for Clifford Park as well. So I assume in all, that's even just added money to a much needed area. So thank you guys for addressing that, Commissioner Woods. I was going to ask why the Long Island Bridge is not listed under District 3, but I understand it's in the citywide. It's sort of one of those ones, because in going through it, when Council Weber asked, I'm like, wait, flipping through it, I didn't see it. But so how do we decide what's citywide when it's in or something specific like that, right? I will read the whole plan next time. I just don't know how it makes the distinction of.
We should list that one on the Quincy city budget, maybe. But
yeah.
I'll let my colleagues speak to the way we categorize these things.
Typically, you know, it's a large sort of, you know, regional sort of asset, like a central facility, like the central maintenance facility, really, it may be located in one place, but it serves, you know, a large.
Right. No, that's fine. I don't have an issue. I just was curious. And then the, speaking of citywide, I know there's the 7.5 million for street trees, street tree planting, you know, 2 million for urban wild. In the street tree, only because I'd love to see Dot Ave have more streets, and I know there might be sidewalk width issues and things that prevent that, but more trees everywhere, to be honest. What does 7.5 million for street tree planting typically, what does that get us? Where does that put us?
So a typical street tree, when it goes in, costs between $1,300 and $1,400, and that's with the planting going in a 2-year water warranty, where the contractor who plants it waters it continuously to give it the best chance of survival for 2 years. So we're planting around 2,000 street trees a year. So that's our plan for the next 5 years, is $7 million worth of planting, trying to get 2,000 trees in the ground in planting seasons only spring and fall. So we can't plant in winter and summer. So we try to get those 2 or 3 months that we can in spring and fall to get 2,000 trees in throughout. But I'll put Dot Ave on the list. We are very grateful that we've increased our urban forestry staff. So we now have 5 arborists on staff that can actually go out and do inspections and get things moving a lot quicker.
That's great. And so, I'm sorry, 2,000 trees.
If I could just add something related to that. So one of the things that my team has been doing is we've recently established an Office of Green Infrastructure, and that team has been working very closely with Commissioner Woods' teams at Parks Department to come up with better designs for the places where street trees go, to ensure that the trees stay healthy, to deal with some of the issues that they can cause, their roots can cause with sidewalks. So we are starting to roll out new approaches to designing the street tree pits that can allow us to accommodate street trees successfully in places that maybe they could not have been done in the past. So this is one of the initiatives that the Streets Cabinet is very excited to be working in partnership on to help get more of that greenery in places where we've struggled in years past.
Thank you. And lastly, this might not be a capital plan project, but while I have a great panel in front of me, I thought I would ask, because a couple of emails have come in recently about the pipes that are deteriorating and bursting, right? And a couple of folks, it's unfortunately in unfortunate situations that cannot afford, but it's on them. Can you just explain what we're doing around sort of it's more of like an engineering infrastructure question, I guess, but with the brittle pipes and the old stuff that we have, and more and more people reaching out saying, we just had a leak in our front yard, it's on us now, but it's going to cost me $10,000 and we can't afford that. And I'm trying to work with those folks to try and get them help, but I'm not sure what I have at my disposal to do that. Do you know what I mean? And I just know we're an old city and these problems are going to keep happening with the wood pipes, but again, not a capital plan question. So
sure, but it's a good question, and so we can, certainly follow up with you and see, water and sewer, to the extent that they're involved in this as well.
Yeah. I just didn't know if there was capital plan infrastructure around what we do on, but that would be under the water and sewer budget then?
Perhaps, yeah, okay. Perhaps. So we can, follow up with you on that.
No, yeah, when they come, I'll ask them. But thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Fitzgerald. Councilor Coletta, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and I'm really happy to have the what I call the varsity squad, the A squad here today with us. No shade to anybody else, but I really have worked with all of you closely on many different capital projects in my district, so I just want to say thank you so much. Don't worry, Sam, I'm coming to you about the O'Donnell School in my second round, but I'll start with streets and climate infrastructure first, and then if we can get to parks and open space, I will. But I want to shout out Carrie specifically for just being an all-star. If you can tell us how to replicate like 10 of you, that would be great. That would be amazing for the city of Boston, so just thank you. We have incredible investments in our city, libraries, community centers, pools. Thank you for the Clarity Pool, really and truly. That's, I can't wait for that opening on July 1st, right? Perfect, okay. July 1st, opening of the Clarity Pool. Do you see what I did? I built it up just to ask you. Yeah, okay. So we love the nuts and bolts of District 1. Our streets are very important to me and residents. We are a highly walkable district. And so we get calls every single day of folks that are walking around. We have 2 million tourists that go through the North End within 2 months, and so our streets do take a hit quite a lot. And so I think for me, a top concern of mine and priority is just more money into repairing and maintaining streets. We have a lot of utility work that is happening, and so the subpar quality of work is manifesting and folks are noticing. And so I understand that it takes 2-3 years to go back and repave it. And so my question is, what are the investments that we're making into our streets? How has that line item increased? And generally, do we have a goal of how many miles per streets or sidewalks that we are trying to repave or maintain per year? Are we meeting that goal, if we even have one? So I'll put that to the chair.
Happy to speak to that, and I appreciate the focus on the streets and the sidewalks. This is the infrastructure everyone relies on every day, no matter how they travel. And so we are, in this capital budget, I'm happy to say, substantially increasing investment in state of good repair work. Our sidewalks are seeing more than a doubling of funding for FY25. And I believe the number in total for sidewalk and ramp work in FY25 is almost $43 million. And roadway resurfacing is increasing approximately 67%, so a significant increase as well. I want to just acknowledge someone in the gallery, Deputy Chief of Streets for Infrastructure and Design, Julia Campbell, who joined the city last year. One of the things that she has been spending a lot of time working on with her team is how we can get better at doing more, both increasing our capacity to do the volume of work that we know is needed on city streets and sidewalks, and to make sure that we're doing a more robust job of planning out that work proactively, targeting the areas with the highest needs, some of which are in your district, Councillor, and communicating effectively with our constituents about where we're making investments and how we're doing those. So we are going to be rolling out some new content online that will have a preview of our next 2 years of sidewalk programs as well as our streets programs in the coming weeks, so you can look for that. The last
Will piece. that be ready? I'm sorry, that website?
I think in the next few weeks, a month or so. All right. I mean, I'm getting. Nobody's giving me a too scared face when I say that. So that should be ready soon, and that will be reflective of what's going on this construction season, and in the case of the sidewalks and ramps next year. The other thing I want to mention is that we are doing some work around utility accountability with our construction management and oversight team. One of the challenges that, as you correctly identified, the volume of work that cuts into our streets and sometimes our sidewalks is enormous, and there's highly variable quality of repairs, and so we are working to try to ensure the utilities are doing a better job of fixing what they break.
Thank you. That actually, I wasn't going to ask this, but you just reminded me of this. So do we have a list of contractors, subcontractors that are just awful? Because I could tell you a list of folks, and just based on complaints and quality of work, like, is there a list that you look at, and when we're trying to work with Boston Water and Sewer or whatever utility company, are we hesitant to work with them? Because some of the work that's being done in East Boston, I can name streets for you, is just really bad.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly take into account past performance with our own contractors when we are hiring people. Any of our construction inspection team could tell you who does good work and who does not. I will say sometimes it's variable, though, even with a single company. One foreperson might be more diligent than another, so there is a fairly high degree of variability. Part of the utility accountability is having that closer oversight, catching things when they don't go right, following up not just with the construction companies, but with the utilities that are employing them, so they know that we're watching their contractors and feel a sense of responsibility to get in front of that and try to address those issues before we spot them and complain to them. So we are trying to increase that level of accountability across the board.
Thank you. I love hearing that, and thank you for your work. I do think that there's an opportunity to bring in green infrastructure, as you mentioned, so really grateful for that. The flex posts for Vision Zero, they've now turned gray or brown and are no longer existent because of people backing into them. So why not use this opportunity to build rain gardens or permeable spaces? And so just thinking about that, I know Julia and Nick are also thinking of that, so putting that out there. I also just want to say, because we had heard from so many people in the North End of the times that they have fallen because of the sidewalk, we reached out to North End Waterfront Health to get the numbers, and it turns out that it was 72 patients across 112 falls that they've seen. So just quantifying that for you and just pushing that out there, that the North End needs some love when it comes to the sidewalks. For climate infrastructure, I don't know how much time I have, Chair.
2 minutes.
2 minutes. All right, climate infrastructure. So $75 million in the capital plan is being utilized with state and federal resources to build a resilient coastline. Shout out to Chris Osgood and Catherine McClandless for going after FEMA and NOAA grants and USDOT dollars from the infrastructure bill. I would love a breakdown of how much of this $75 million is actual city dollars and where they are going. The city owns about 16% of all 47 miles of the coastline, and so I want us to demonstrate how quickly we can move on this issue to fortify our coastline. The state owns about 50, private actors own about 30%, and so as we're in the infancy stages of talking about things like a waterfront business improvement district, I want to show that the city is moving quickly on this and investing X amount of dollars into climate infrastructure to fortify our coastline. So of that $75 million, how much of that is actually city money?
That is all city money.
All, okay. And then in addition, we're going after these NOAA grants.
Correct. Yep, exactly.
Beautiful. Okay. Do we have a breakdown of where those are
we can
going?
follow up with that information.
Okay, great. Parks and open space, very quickly. Shout out to Commissioner Woods, who is very responsive. Thank you for your work. Shout out to Bill Masterson of Tree Eastie, who is the unofficial tree commissioner of East Boston. He has eliminated bottlenecks within the approval system of identifying city blocks that could be dug up, and then because of his volunteer time, planting them and watering them. Has there been any work to break down some of these barriers or bottlenecks between Public Works and the Parks Department to plant trees faster?
I think we've added capacity to our staff, which helps us get to it a lot quicker. I think a lot of the bottlenecks is when a city agency tries to do it versus a constituent tries to do it, just because of digging up into sidewalks and things of that. That's different. So those will still be in place because it's a lot different for a constituent to try to get permission to dig up a sidewalk and excavate versus, working hand in hand. But I think capacity has definitely grown, so we're seeing things get planted faster. We were planting 1,200 street trees. We're now up to 2,000 street trees. So we're continuing to grow. We also have a website that's online currently that shows you everything that was planted in 21, 22, and 23, and where all current vacant tree pits exist, so you can follow it and see where the plantings are happening all over the city.
Great, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Councilor Coletta. Councilor Santana, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the administration for being here. I'll try to go in different buckets. My first will be on housing, so maybe I'll go to you, Chief. Can you just kind of discuss the city's approach to addressing housing needs within the FY25 to 29 plan, especially in terms of like affordability and availability across various income levels and demographics? I know that the Mayor's Office of Housing obtains funding for annual improvements as an annual program under the capital plan. I understand that this is specifically for BHA. What are the type of improvements being done to BHA, and how are these improvements helping residents' quality of life?
Sure. Yes, Councilor, that's a great question. And it's a relatively new phenomenon, the city stepping into leveraging the capital plan to preserve affordable housing. And there's a number of different projects that we've partnered with the Mayor's Office of Housing and the Boston Housing Authority to implement those projects. And we think it is one of the many tools that BHA can help stabilize their properties.
Thank you, Director. Going over kind of just BPS and the community centers, excuse me, sorry. Regarding the community centers, could you elaborate on the plans for the new, I see the $65 million investment for Grove Hall, and can you also just kind of talk about how that aligns with the city goals for youth and family services? Is there a timeline specifically in place for this project right now?
So we're in design. We will be, I would say in the spring next year, out to bid for procurement for the new building. So, and it's roughly about 2 to 3 year construction project.
Okay. Great, thank you. And can you provide more details on the timeline and scope of the ongoing major projects within BPS? Particularly the Philbrick Summer Merger at the Irvin Building and the Josiah Upper Quincy School?
So yes, Josiah Quincy, the upper will be complete in June, July. We're also doing an envelope project at the elementary across the street, and the I'm sorry, what was, the Irving. The Irving, we just got, received bids in. The swings, we just turned over the swing space to BPS on Monday of this week, and we have the general contractor starting in about a month. And that timeline is roughly, it's 18-month schedule that we put out in the bid document, so September of 2025 is when we're anticipating it to be complete.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. And kind of going over to streets and safeties, Chief, what measures are being, I know you talked a lot about kind of like the speed humps on the streets, but, really focusing on the safety and accessibility of our sidewalks. Given the allocated funds for roadway resurfacing and sidewalk reconstruction, as well as neighborhood-based street safety improvements, can you just talk more about those investments and how are those being prioritized?
Sure, yeah. So in the case of the, state of good repair funding that supports sidewalk reconstruction, ramp reconstruction, the sidewalk work is largely prioritized based around assessments that we conduct of the current condition of the sidewalk. We identify areas that have priority needs based on poor, a significant concentration of poor condition sidewalks, and then we go and do a series of work to repair all of the sidewalks and the ramps in that area at once. And we are increasing our capacity to do that with this budget. We also have increased capacity in this budget for doing more spot work where it may not be that a whole area has degraded sidewalks, but we have one particularly challenging safety or accessibility issue in a particular place. We know that we need to do more of that work where we can just go in and fix that one block or even that one flag of sidewalk where there's a particular problem. So we're increasing our capacity to do that. In those cases, it's really about trying to increase in the responsive work. It's more about just being able to come when somebody tells us about a problem that we see and needs work, and being able to respond quickly to that. We have, as I mentioned kind of earlier, there's all of our projects are safety projects in one way or another, and so whether we're building a bus lane or a bike lane or even doing some of the basic maintenance work, we're trying to do it in a way that increases overall safety. We do have a number of dedicated safety programs, though. Two things that I would highlight: we have we're in receipt of two significant federal grants totaling almost $25 million from the Safe Streets for All program. We've now won grants in both of the two rounds that they've had. We are applying again for the third round. The first of those projects will allow us to fully reconstruct 9 key intersections throughout the city that have significant safety issues to improve safety and in some cases address signaling challenges. The second grant was allocated towards improving our signalized intersections broadly. Last year, the city rolled out new traffic signal operations guidelines which prioritize pedestrian safety in the way we design our traffic signal systems. This money will, with city match, total almost $20 million and allow us to accelerate the implementation of those new guidelines so that more intersections reflect the best practices that we know save lives and help prevent people from being injured in crashes.
Great. No, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that thoughtful response, Chief. Going to the Commissioner, this is more of a kind of a comment and a question, regarding to our parks. My office has been getting a lot of emails regarding pickleball, and I'm sure many other counselors and maybe your office has, your department or cabinet has received. Can you just kind of talk about how do we view just addressing different sports here in the city of Boston and, kind of the investments that we make in our parks to reflect that and the diversity of our sports?
Sure. So every time we go into a capital plan, we have a robust community process with 3 meetings to hear what the community wants to see in their park. Because our parks are safer when they're more well used, when there's more positive activity happening. That's when we don't see negative activity take place. So we want our parks to be filled all the time with people. So what better way to fill them to put things in parks that the neighborhood wants to see in their park. So through a process, it may be a street hockey rink, it may be pickleball. So we don't just put whatever Ryan Woods thinks should go in that park. It's from the community what they want to see in there. And then we go back to budget with it. I think pickleball, as you can read all over the newspaper, is a nationwide phenomenon. The noise might get to some people, as Councilor Coletta knows in her district with people. However, we are lining tennis courts to allow them to play pickleball. There is like a 1-inch differential from a tennis net to a pickleball pickleball net, so many people like to bring their own nets, and allowing people to tape off areas as they can. We're trying something in JP at English High School where we're going to put designated just pickleball because we're seeing a huge influx in JP. So we're putting that at the school there just to try to see if people go to designated pickleball, so we don't have as much conflict with the tennis players and the pickleball players as we see at South Street Mall sometimes. So,
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Santana. And let me start the timer. Commissioner Woods, my first question is on pickleballers. No, I'm joking. I know yesterday we sent an email just asking for the capital breakdown. Director Williamson, I just want to put it on the record to see if we can get the capital plan from 2008 all the way up until 2018, if possible, for the district breakdown is the way that we have it here in this packet. Chief Franklin Hodge, there are 2 intersections in D4. One, I know my predecessor was advocating for, is the 5-way intersection of Cummins Highway, American Legion, and Canterbury. Hoping that in the near future, sometime, maybe hopefully like next year, we could try to take a look at redesigning that intersection.
Yep, we will definitely put that on our list as a place to focus. As of right now, there is not a project focused on that, but I travel through there pretty regularly, and I could not agree more that it could use some love. So
Awesome.
we'll try to get to that.
And the other one is American Legion and Walk Hill.
Yes, so American Legion and Walk Hill, I believe, is slated to get some improvements in the near term. We are doing a series of crossings, crosswalk improvements on American Legion Highway, and I believe that the Walk Hill intersection is one of those. I can get you more details on where we are with that project and that design. It's not a full reconstruction of that intersection, but it should help improve safety for people who are crossing there.
Awesome. And then now I'm just in that area of my district, and I'm thinking now about Stella Road and the private way issue. I know this is a state law, and exploring ways on how, thinking of ways on how to change all private ways to public ways, or some sort of assistance. But what can the city do for those private ways, especially with low to income, moderate households? Sometimes these bills could be thousands of dollars to convert. Especially after deferred maintenance for many years. Just wanting to hear what can we do to help out those neighborhoods.
Yeah, no, I think that's it's a serious challenge, and particularly in your district, but in many of the districts around the city, we have private ways that are in a state of disrepair for which there is simply not any reasonable there's no reasonable way we could expect homeowners along those streets to make the repairs that are needed to the streets, especially because in many cases converting private ways to public ways involves upgrading stormwater and sewer infrastructure that runs underneath those streets. And when we've done analysis on some of the streets where there have been challenges, that is actually the biggest part of the bill, is the underground portion of it. And that's something that is overseen by and charged by the Water and Sewer Commission, but it runs through the same betterment process that the streets do. I wish I had a clearer answer for this, and I think it's something that I want to work with the council, with the budget office, with Water and Sewer, potentially even with some of our partners at the state legislature to really try to come up with solutions. Currently what the city will do is when things reach a certain critical state of disrepair, we'll go in and do kind of very temporary and make safe work so that a fire truck can get down the street. But that does not result in a street that has durability or longevity, and throwing down asphalt after patch after patch. Right. Eventually the street just falls apart and it becomes more like a gravel road than a paved street. And so this is an area we don't have good solutions yet, but we would love to work with you and our other departments to try to come up with some better ideas.
Would appreciate that, and definitely willing to talk offline about this, but like an estimated cost on some of these more deferred streets in my district.
I don't know that we've ever done a full assessment of it. I think back of the envelope math that when we had conversations with Water and Sewer, we were hearing hundreds of millions of dollars looking at all the streets citywide. But I don't know that that's anything more than a kind of napkin math, and ultimately, I think there's a lot of work for any street to assess what's there now. There may be places where a lot of infrastructure is needed and other places where little is needed, and we'd really have to look at it on a case-by-case basis.
Awesome. And then speed humps. Sounds like you're making great progress. 300, you said, so far?
Yep.
Out of the 500 on an annual?
Yeah, we're going to do more than 500 this year.
Okay.
I commit to that. I don't have an exact number yet, but we're going to do as many as we can.
That'll be music to my constituents' ears. And then, Deputy, we have the Lila Frederick that closed. I know this will be used as swing space, but when other schools merge or close, what will those old buildings be used for?
A combination of swing space in other schools, other potential mergers and closures. We'd leave everything on the table. So, again, to be determined. But largely, we are in need of a lot of swing space in order to accommodate a lot of the broader moves that we need to make as a district.
All right, and then there were some capital issues with the Up Academy Holland. That, whether it's the driveway going into the Holland School, I know there was some banister issues, there's like a list that I sent over. Any update on some of those upgrades, the fence around the park area?
We could get that to you. We can talk offline and get those updates to you. But my understanding is that we're aware of the list. We were working off some of them. I'm just not sure where we are with each specific one. We can get that update for you.
Awesome. And Director Griffin, a study. What moves a study forward? Because I have a cultural center study, and I just wanted to know, how do we continue to move that forward? It was on the capital plan last year, but I'm not aware of any study being started.
We didn't start it. We had a capacity issue early last year, and then we didn't. We have not started that. We could start that this fiscal year.
We can start it this fiscal year?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. And then I know we talked about, in Franklin Field, there was a geothermal investment inside of Franklin Field. I didn't see this on the capital plan. I was wondering where that would be in terms of
geothermal in
BHA.
It'll be on BHA's
Boston
capital?
Housing.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome. And then Commissioner Woods, I know I flagged for you before the Franklin Field Little League. Just kind of getting an update on where we're at with that fence.
I will get that for you. I don't have it today.
Okay. And then the ADA curb ramp project. Any update on where we're at in terms of getting all those ADA compliance ramps?
Yeah, so we are under a consent decree, a court-ordered consent decree to upgrade every ramp in the city to be ADA compliant. We've had an annual ramp production target of about 1,600 ramps per year. We did not hit that number last year, and so we are aiming to make up some of that difference this year. That is part of why there is such a large increase in the sidewalk and ramp budget in this capital project. A lot of that work has been focused on creating the team structures and the work processes that allow us to move quickly and do larger volumes of ramps all at once. We're doing more as well to coordinate that better with our paving program and other reconstruction programs. So we feel confident that we'll be able to increase that volume substantially with this capital budget and with the changes we've made within the team structure.
And how much of the budget is for the ADA compliant ramps?
I believe it's over the full capital plan. I want to say it is, let's see, there's actually, it's a little complicated because it's switching between two line items on the budget. So I don't want to give you an exact number and get the math wrong, but we can get you that for sure.
All right, thank you.
Sorry to interrupt. Able to give me the update on the Holland if you want it. Let me know you're ready.
Yep.
Sorry about that. Thanks to the team for pulling it down. So of the 17 projects that you on your list, 12 are complete, 2 are in progress, and 2 have not started. So we made progress on that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now I'll go back to my council colleagues for a second round of questioning, starting with the Vice Chair, Council Pepe.
Nice. Thank you, Chair. Again, to the panelists, thank you so much for being here and answering so many questions. My first question is regarding the study being done at B3 at the police station in Mattapan. What does that study entail? What can we expect to come out from there?
The study's complete, and it's a recommendation for a full gut of the building. But yeah, no, the study is complete.
Has any decision been made on the future of the B3? As a result of the
Sorry,
study?
I'm thinking of something else. I'm thinking of a separate project. We have not started that for B3. I apologize. If it's in this year's plan, then we'll start it. We'll assign it in July.
Okay, in July? Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. I just want to advocate for B3. I visited them about a couple of weeks ago, and they have an amazing staff, a lot of officers there, but the building definitely needs some improvement. Just very outdated. I just want to give that plug in there. In regards to Councilor Santana, I thank him for bringing BHA into the conversation. I do have two developments that are of pretty high level concerns, which is the Archdale Public Housing and the Fairmont Public Housing. Archdale is in Rosendale, Fairmont in Hyde Park. Archdale has recently had multiple roofs leaking in their roofs, which has called mold to go into the units. And in Fairmont, there's an issue with the water mitigation plan, leading the basements of some of the units to be flooded, which has also led to mold and issues, and even in some units to have mushrooms. Are there any plans in this budget to approach both of these developments, specifically Archdale and Fairmont?
I do not believe that those two projects, typically it's the Housing Authority that takes lead, and it's entirely possible that it may be in their plans, but it's not included in the city's capital plan at the moment.
Okay, so ask specifically BHA.
Correct.
I want to make sure it'll be at that hearing. And I don't know if this is a question, this might be a question for Chief Franklin Hodge. Something that I realized in my district, and I know that I believe District 6 can agree with me here, but I won't speak for him. Some of the sidewalks are very impacted by the roots of trees that cause a bump, and wheelchairs, strollers, they cannot pass by the sidewalk, making them have to go on the street. Have we come up with a unique solution, or are we thinking about piloting something that does not necessarily mean we have to cut the tree down, but can potentially add like a nice curve on top of the sidewalk to make sure that pedestrians can cross?
Yeah, so, street trees are beautiful, but street trees and sidewalks don't always get along so well for the reasons you mentioned. This is something that we are working on some technical solutions and design approaches to. One of the things that we have done is work closely with the Parks Department around tree species planting. Some species are more prone to the kind of pavement or the sidewalk disruption than others, and so really making sure we're planting the right kinds of trees. We're also doing, I mentioned earlier, some of the work with our Office of Green Infrastructure to design new standards for how street trees are planted, and those involve both things that you can see on the surface level that improve the design of those so that more water is accessed, flows into the tree pit and can feed the trees and sometimes reduce some of the vertical root growth. There's also subsurface treatments around structural soil and other designs that allow the tree roots to grow in a way that's less likely to be disruptive of the sidewalk. For the trees that we have and the pits that we have, this is largely about us being able to go in and working in conjunction with the Parks Department so as not to damage the trees, to make repairs on the sidewalk. We have started to use flexible paving materials, asphalt, essentially porous asphalt that can help bring more water to the tree and makes it a little bit more forgiving than a solid concrete panel. So that's now part of the toolkit that we have when we are doing sidewalk repairs. We try to address these kinds of tree lifts.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a specific tree I have in my head on Cornell Street in Rosendale that has led to multiple residents tripping. So I will flag that for you in parks. And then the last pitch I want to make is to Commissioner Woods. Norfolk Park, there's a football field there, but they can't practice when the lights goes up because there's no light. So I would just like to put a plug in there for future consideration to have lights. I know that the Mattapan Patriots play out of Almond Park, but their program is expanding, and they have a lot of kids, so they would love an extra field. And Norfolk Park is their field, but just can't practice after dark. So I would love to just be an advocate for that park there.
Great, thank you.
That is all.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Next, we'll go to Council Brady.
Thank you. Let's see, where was I? So, Chief Franklin Hodge, I know in our capital plan there's this strategic bike network. I know it's sort of been on hold. We're very happy to hear that we got some federal money for the rebuilding of the Cambridge Street Bridge. So I'm assuming that was what the hold up was. Like, so I'm anticipating that when we rebuild the bridge, we will have the strategic bike network will be part of that project.
Yeah, the Cambridge Street Bridge, we're talking about the one in Alston, correct?
Yes.
So the Cambridge Street Bridge is being rebuilt by MassDOT as a part of the Alston I-90 project. We did receive, as part of that larger project, as I'm sure you know, $350 million for the overall, through the Reconnecting Communities program to fund this $2 billion major reconstruction project that will incorporate quite a bit of bike infrastructure and pedestrian infrastructure. For the strategic bike network, which is focused on city projects, we do have North Beacon Street, which is likely to go into construction this year, which will be adding planned bike lanes along the length of North Beacon Street from Union Square going all the way out to, I think, Parsons and approaching up towards Leo Birmingham. And we have a few other smaller bike network projects that are in various stages of planning within the neighborhood. We also have Western Ave, which we are trying to coordinate construction of bike and transit projects there, along with all the other things happening in the neighborhood. Last thing I would mention on that is the Route 57 priority corridor. We'll add some, although it is primarily focused on transit improvements and allowing the bus to move more quickly, it will add some accommodation for bikes and create more lanes that can be shared between a bus and a bike.
Thank you. Cleveland Circle.
Yes.
It's one of those nightmare intersections, about 5 streets coming in, plus you put MBTA tracks in the middle of it. I spoke to Nick Gove this morning about, keeping it on the horizon. It's complicated because you have to work with the MBTA to do improvements. Is there any sort of anything in the offing to get that sort of in the schedule for?
There is, and I don't have an answer off the top of my head about timing on that, but I know that there has been some coordinated design work done between our team and the MBTA team. There's also a Town of Brookline bridle path project that would address the Beacon Street area that comes into Cleveland Circle with a bike path in the center of the street. And so I think there's a desire to see some coordination or at least planning for that as well. I will get you a status update on where we are with that project, who's going to construct it, and so I don't know off the top of my head the funding sources
it's a
for
miserable
that.
one.
But I agree.
Yeah, this is one for the Veronica Smith Senior Centre. I see you're going to do some work on the HVAC system. Is that one for Kelly? I just would like to, elevate that as the Jackson Man Community Centre closes. The Jackson Man is a FEMA emergency shelter and cooling centre for our community. So having an alternative, accessible building like the Veronica Smith, the cooling piece of it is going to be pretty important given we have these increasing heat waves every summer. So and really push to have that given some priority, make sure we get that happening soon. The other thing I was wondering about is just projected expenditures. We've so many. I have a whole lot of lists here, and everything's in design or so to be scheduled. Exactly what does that mean? To be scheduled? It's somewhere off in the future. How far off in the future?
I don't know if it could be, sometimes it could be a capacity issue with PFD or a funding issue. So in terms of the, you know, what project is being funded, so I don't know if you...
And just, you know, I was just, generally speaking, you know, something that is listed as to be scheduled, you know, could have constraints like Carrie mentioned, but we do want to demonstrate that we're committed to doing it. So, you know, we want to make sure we have it in the plan and that we will, you know, do it at some point. But because of constraints, sometimes you know, just have to leave it at to be scheduled for some period of time.
Yeah. Again, it's back to this community centre that's such an important piece of our neighbourhood, and a voting place for 5 precincts where we have no idea where they're going to vote this November. So I had, of all the 440 existing projects in the current year's financial year 24 capital plan, how many projects have not progressed? Like, this is something you can get back to me with. How many projects have not progressed to the next status? And what projects are behind schedule? And what internal management controls are there when a project falls behind or falls off the list completely? And of all the 427 projects in the recommended financial year 25 capital project, can you provide a timeline for, is there a timeline for anticipated expenditures and project status progression, you know, by quarter or whatever, just to know that we can keep an eye on how things are progressing? Because, you know, it's almost like we wait and wait and wait, and then there's all of a sudden we just don't know where things are at sometimes. And also, does OBM have written policies to guide capital planning and evaluating departmental requests and prioritisation for what makes it into the capital budget? How do we decide what makes it into the capital budget?
There are some thresholds, so if it's a life safety issue, an accessibility issue, they, you know, have sort of a stronger standing in prioritization. But generally, you know, it typically you know, it has to be a city-owned asset, so that's the parameters that you start with. Yeah, the guidance. But most departments in PFD are very familiar with sort of. They're the experts on the outward-facing prioritization of community concerns, but.
Mm-hmm. And there used to be separate annual projects called critical facility repairs, each funding emergency repairs at BCYF, fire, public library, police department, property management, etc. But then that section went away in the financial year 18, and we're just wondering why we took that out, because that helps us understand why some things jump the queue and get into more priority. Those
projects, in many cases, get embedded in the operating budget. In some departments, there are capacities to do sort of quick single trade projects that aren't as complex, that rise to the level of public facilities departments. So there is that critical repair budget. I think in parks, there's also a similar sort of general parks improvements where they're, you know, fencing, small repairs. So.
Yeah, thank you. One at a time again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Braden. Councilor Durkin, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Chair. I wanted to focus a little bit on the West End, particularly the West End Branch Library. I'm grateful and excited about that project, but also wanted to share the concerns of neighbors. They really want to have a temporary facility. I don't think anyone is here from BPL, but I wanted to say this out loud because it's the #1 concern of residents with the new redevelopment of the West End Library, that there be a temporary location. It's something I've shared with the developer that was chosen, POA, and it's something that I'll be continuing to advocate for. So I think through the chair, if we could send that to the public library department, that would be great. Sorry, okay. I said that wrong. And so I about in Mission Hill, McLaughlin Playground, wanted to talk a little bit more about that. I think we are having some challenges with folks using that space outside of the dawn till dusk times, but excited to see investment there. Just curious, Commissioner, if you have any thoughts or more information on what the public process will look like for the Mission Hill community?
Sure. So our standard process is we try to do a series of 3 meetings. The first one is to really talk about the existing site and what it looks like, and hear from residents what they'd like to see as renovations at that facility. And then the second meeting, we come back with usually rendering A, B, and C, and then we hear at that meeting that they like this in A, this in B, this in C, and we go back for a third time to a final meeting and say, did we get it right? Are these the features that you'd like to see in this neighborhood park? So we'd follow that process through to make sure we get the features. Like I said, we want these parks to be utilized and used. And again, if we have more positive activity in there, we won't have as many problems in nights and evenings and things of that nature. So trying to find what the right elements are in the park will all come from the community.
Thank you so much. Just flagging that, because I get so much feedback about that particular park, that may come up, but excited to engage in the process. And then to Mission Hill transportation planning, particularly I know that Terrace, Gurney, and Parker have, somewhat of a redesign or study underway. And I know neighbors are anxiously awaiting hearing more about that. And, shout out to William Moose, who's doing an incredible job and has spent many hours talking to me about that. So thankful to his leadership and yours, but wanted to talk a little bit more about what that would be used for.
Yeah, so that project is, as you know, been underway with a lot of great conversations with folks in the community. I think it came about during a period of very intense development on Terrace Street and concerns about how that street would function with a lot more residential units on it. I don't want to kind of break news here that the team isn't ready to share yet, but I know that they're very close to finalizing recommendations for Terrace, Parker, and Gurney that would provide for traffic calming along those streets, potentially some changes to how vehicles move through some of the key intersections, and would offer the potential for longer-term capital investments that would improve the condition for pedestrians along Terrace Street in particular, where there are very narrow and inaccessible sidewalks. So that team is very close to, I think, having a set of recommendations to bring back to the community. Some of the changes could be done quickly. Others will require a longer-term investment with capital funding that has not yet been identified, but potentially could be sourced from future development projects as mitigation.
And I would say interrelated to that is the Tremont Columbus Phase 2, which is not included in the District 8 summary, but is part of the citywide summary. But I definitely see that as a huge win for the area. But I know, again, people want to be able to participate in that public process. And obviously those things are so interrelated. So I've been encouraging the city to do those sort of on a similar timeline to get that feedback together, because it is so hard for people we have such limited community volunteers who engage in these processes, just trying to make sure that their time is well spent.
Yeah, we appreciate that, and we have been trying to closely coordinate the community conversations around those two things. And I think one of the things we are expecting is that some of the traffic calming, particularly speed humps that's planned for the Mission Hill neighborhood, will happen in advance of that project to make sure that any impacts either from construction or long-term changes to the roadway on Tremont Columbus are mitigated through, if they have impacts on the surrounding neighborhoods, that they are mitigated. So a lot of that ancillary work is happening, and I believe the teams are working very closely to make sure there's a clear, unified message around those projects.
Thank you. And I'm not aware of any speed humps, particularly on the hill part of Mission Hill, or because obviously we've been told that they can't happen under a certain grade of, but are there certain?
There are a number of streets that are eligible for speed humps on Mission Hill. It's not always going to be, there's the flat part of the hill where the grades are not so steep. I think there are also streets, even looking at a street like Parker, which has some very steep parts, there are some parts of that street that are fairly flat and may be able to accommodate speed humps. So there is a zone of speed humps in Mission Hill that is in our early action list for the next 3 years. Actually, maybe multiple zones of speed humps and there's quite a few streets on Mission Hill that have eligibility. So when we go to do the actual design work, the engineers look very closely at each street segment. They figure out where they can and can't place speed humps, and they put them where they can, even in hilly parts of the neighborhood.
And I did get some emails from neighbors, both for and against speed humps in Mission Hill, that I'll forward to you around the specific areas where people think they're of interest. So happy to share that and excited to engage in that process.
Yeah, please do.
Sorry, and just wanted to add, there are a number of streets that I think should be considered for some capital improvements in the coming years. Just wanted to shout out St. Alphonsus Street, which I know there's a development proposed on that street, so maybe that'll be part of that. But and then William O'Connell Way in the West End, and I have a couple of other streets that I need to get in order, but I'll send this to the chair and then to you, Chief. Just some areas that I think are need of improvement in the district. And I know if you look at the breakdowns of the capital budget, it really does break down for at least District 8 and in terms of we don't have a lot of those public facilities, but people see our roads as those public facilities. So just any encouragement in terms of repaving and I know that, thank you so much for your work with On the Thorough Path, which I know we've already gathered the money for through mitigation. But I think it's really important that people see the streets as the thing that people want to see improved. And grateful for your leadership in the 6 streets that were patched and trench repaved in Beacon Hill, and thank you for your partnership.
Thank you, Councillor. More work to do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Durkin. Councilor Weberle, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Let's see. A couple questions for Commissioner Woods. Sorry. Billings Field in West Roxbury. There's people. There's been a lot of advocacy around a street hockey rink in the park, and my understanding is it's part of the plan to include that rink.
It is. We had a great mayor's coffee hour out there at Billings yesterday. We had about 200 residents that were out there, and we were showing all the plan. There was a lot of excitement yesterday, and the street hockey rink is in the plan.
So, and so what is the timeline for that?
So the earliest it would start construction would be late fall. So we're at 60% design right now. We put it out to bid. So earliest it would start is November. Latest it would start is by March. So we'll get through this whole summer and early fall season, and it would start by winter. So we'll be offline next year.
Okay, and there's no contingencies that need to happen. It's ready to. It's going to move forward.
The only contingencies will be what the bids come in at. So we have it budgeted, but that's always we put things out to bid and we see what the bids come in at. Kerry can tell you that firsthand. But no, we have nothing that, it's not like we have to wait for the T to sign off or anybody else, like things like that. So. Okay,
and then just sticking with you, I was with the mayor on Saturday at Daisy Field for the Regan League start. What's the timeline on renovation?
So that's a project with the Boston Water and Sewer Commission. They're trying to put a large basin underneath that field, so there's a lot of coordination work with Boston Water and Sewer. So I can try to get back to you on a timeline. I don't have it yet, but it's not just a Parks regular project.
Okay, and then last question, field of questions for you. Dog parks. Mm-hmm. I guess what's the city's approach? Are they looking to make more dog parks or what?
Yeah, the mayor had a goal of trying to get a dog park in every single neighborhood of the city. It wasn't specified whether that dog park would be on city-owned land, state-owned land, where it would be, but trying to work to find the right locations. So right now, for example, in JP, there is a dog park in the design for Flaherty Playground, and also a lot of conversations with DCR to get one on, where does everyone go with their dogs in JP? Is it?
The Southwest Corridor?
Southwest Corridor, yes. Thank you.
Okay, and then so the Flaherty Park, do you know what the timeline is for that?
So we've gone through design, we just have to move it forward. So we're just trying to cash flow it and stuff so we can hopefully move forward. It should be in construction, I'd say this year, but we have another budget hearing on May 20th, so I'll have a firmer answer for you at that date.
Okay. And then there's also mention of exploring dog parks. I'm not sure in Franklin Park. Is that, do you know which parts of Franklin Park or where that is?
We're going to give a few different locations where we think a dog park could work there to hear the community feedback. With 520 acres of land at Franklin Park, we think it's an opportunity. Having been so close to both Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, and JP as a central location. So we're going to put 3 or 4 different options out there and hear from the community which they think would be best.
Yeah, I just, with Flaherty Park, my understanding is going to be like a small dog park. Is it going to be expressly limited to that? Is it say just only bring small dogs, or?
There's no limit to smaller, larger dogs in there, but it is a limited area because we have a smaller footprint at Flaherty. I think in an area like Franklin Park, you certainly have a lot more runway to have areas for small dogs, area for large dogs.
Yeah, I think the Flaherty dog park is not going to meet the need for medium, large-sized dogs, and I hope there's a lot of demand for it in JP.
Yes.
Okay, and so I'm sorry. There's a Eggleston Square Library. I don't know what the timeline is for that, and also I'm not sure where it's going to go.
The existing site is what the study concluded. So that will go out for procurement for a designer.
So will that require the demolition of the existing library?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That was the recommendation that was accepted.
Okay. And sorry, Chief Franklin Hodge, Eggleston Square redesign. It's a 25% design status. So what does that mean for English speakers like me? I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah, so that project was somewhat stalled for a couple of years. We are putting this back on track. We will have an updated design to share with the community this spring. And one of the things that will happen prior to the full implementation of this project, the whole area around basically from Eggleston Square going, I guess, west or south on Washington Street, is slated to get speed humps. So those are going to be installed this spring. And then the larger Eggleston Square redesign project will kind of get layered in on top of that. So we should have our 25% design for that project, including some of the necessary bike connections to take the bike links that exist at the Southwest Corridor and Boylston Street and extend them all the way to Franklin Park. That should be coming to the community this spring. I don't have an estimate for construction, but it likely would be not before next year, just given where we're at in the design process.
Okay, and then do you have any idea, people have asked how many parking spaces are going to be lost due to the redesign? You may not have that answer.
I don't have that answer off the top of my head, but that's certainly something we can try to make sure we focus some attention to when we do the presentation back to the community of the updated design.
Okay, and another question for you, Chief. Boylston Street, we've got the contraflow bike lane, and I think Councillor Durkin has highlighted issues with pedestrian safety and some of the bikes. I've heard from people on Boylston Street, coming onto Boylston Street where they're looking for traffic coming from their right, but there could be a bike coming from their left. Is there any plan to make that safer for folks who are coming onto a street where there's a contraflow bike lane? Either tell the bikes to stop at the intersections or something. What can I tell folks?
Yeah, so, typically, we contraflow bike lanes functionally create a two-way street where previously there is a one-way street. And so there is, anytime you make a street direction change, there is a period of adaptation as people get used to the fact that they're, have to look both ways on a street where they may be accustomed to looking one way. Obviously, that is a thing, though, that people navigate two-way streets in the city on a daily basis. And so, we typically will not put in place any special signage, but we do feel like it's important to make sure that all of the pavement markings are there and all the indicators that somebody might see to recognize, oh, there's traffic coming in both directions. On the Boylston Street in particular, there is a stop sign at Chestnut Street because the visibility as bikes coming down from Center approaching Chestnut, there's a building right on the corner and it makes it very hard for pedestrians to see bikes and vice versa. So we do expect bikes to obey that stop sign at that intersection. Beyond that, I think, we're happy to take a look if there's specific places where we're experiencing concerns. We can certainly look at adding additional yield markings for bikes to indicate that they may need to yield to pedestrians, as well as signage or other indications to help people successfully navigate that.
Yeah, I had a couple people to tell me at Adelaide Street where it hits Boylston that cars are they're going much slower now. They used to come speeding up there, that Boylston, but now there are speed humps. But they don't necessarily think, and maybe it's because it's just new, to look to their left for a bike, and then the bikes don't stop. There's no stop sign for them, so they're just going down the street. And, it's been a couple close calls. So
yeah, we can look at adding some more signage there. I'll add that to our list.
Thanks.
Thank you, Council Weber. Council Flynn, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, thank you to the panel. I have a few follow-up questions that I asked earlier relating to the South End community, the Back Bay as well. I represent a portion of the Back Bay. The planning process for the South End Library, it's been closed for several years now, as you know. Residents, especially residents in Villa Victoria, residents in Cathedral, Castle Square, residents are asking me to get this thing fixed, to get it built. They also would like to see a third floor addition, third floor as part of that. Do we have an update on the South End Library?
Sure, Councillor. We completed this study in terms of, we were looking at in terms of pricing, based on the program that we involved the community in and what their priorities are. So we looked at a renovation in an addition versus a new build. It's looking like a new build is what, but the cost came in excessively high. So I sent it's back with my team to look at options to reduce cost before we can go further in design.
Okay. Thank you. I also had the opportunity, I was with Councilor Fernandez Anderson at the St. Botolph Street Neighborhood Association, Chief Franklin Hodge, in the Back Bay, asking about speed humps as well in that particular area. Any thoughts?
I can get you an answer to that. Give me one moment. We do have all of our upcoming speed hump zones posted on the city's website. But I believe that we just did a round of speed humps along in the kind of lower Fenway area around Hemingway and Mass Ave and that area. And I will, rather than make you wait and use time, I will get you an answer as to where we are with St. Botolph's and that neighborhood as well.
Okay, excellent. I also, this week I was with Mary Driscoll at the Condon Community Center, the Condon School, I should say. The residents, the students, the principal, the teachers, Ryan, were asking me about the park outside, the outdoor softball area. It's a beautiful field, but behind it, as you know, is the basketball court. What can we do on that? And residents, it's in the middle of the public housing development. You know, they want a basketball court that is in good shape. What can we do, short term and long term?
Sure. In the short term, we can look at it if it's cracks or things of that to see what can be patched, some patchwork that can be done there. In the long term, we try to do 7 to 8 full court repairs every single year, so we can try to make sure it's in the cycle for a court repair. But I can have somebody go out. We have an inspection program where I can have somebody go out and get an answer for us this week on what issues are there and how we can best address them.
Thank you, Ryan. There's an outstanding basketball program, Brian, as you know, at Metalavana Park in the basketball court. It's for boys and girls, basically from the age of like 7 to 14, 7 to 15. One of the problems they have is the lights. And I think we were able to get the lights on from the softball field that would help the basketball court. But are we able to get a portable light so that the games could be extended after like 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock? I think we have 250 kids that are playing in this basketball league, and we want to keep them playing basketball and off the streets. But can you work with me on maybe doing a site visit and talking about how we can improve the situation for the basketball players?
Happy to. We have allowed that at Moakley Park and at Pagel, where JP Youth Soccer does it, and Volo Sports do it. However, they both bring in the lights there on their own. The city hasn't provided portable lights yet, but we already have a mechanism. We have allowed it.
Okay. Maybe next week we could try to do a site visit, Ryan. I also don't necessarily represent the Boston Common, as you know, but I represent the area across the street from the Boston Common. So it's important to me as well, certainly the renovations. I'm also concerned, Ryan, about public safety in the Boston Common, especially at night. We have many challenges, public safety challenges. What are we going to do in terms of infrastructure improvements to make the park safer for everybody to walk through?
So we've increased lighting already in the park and also have flood lighting that come off the acorn lights to, shine more light in the area to open it up. We've also had a great working relationship with Captain Martin in the area to do a lot of, operational work in the park. We're seeing a lot of negative activity happen over by the Park Street Brewer Fountain side of the plaza. So we're working again with the Friends of the Public Gardens to try to activate that, to have it lively and things happening. We've seen a complete turnaround on the Boylston Street edge once the beer garden was operated last year. We saw a lot of that negative activity move out of that corner of the park. So we're trying on activation strategies to try to activate those areas of the park.
Thank you, Ryan. Chief, State Street, a topic we've been dealing with for a long period of time. Where are we on that? Residents are really reaching out to me, and I believe Councilor Colletter as well. What's the latest on State Street? Residents feel like their voices haven't been heard.
Yes, we've had now, I think, going on 4 years of community engagement with folks from the Wharf District Council and other participants along that corridor. We are doing some deeper analysis of some of the particular alternative concepts that the Wharf District Council has put forward. I know that these have been reviewed and responded to previously, but we are doing some more technical analysis related to signal timing on some of their some of their alternatives, which we intend to bring back to that group in the next month.
Okay, will you make sure that I'm included in that?
Yes, of course.
Thank you. The other area I did want to focus on is an issue that's concerning to me. What are we able to do, Chief, as it relates to reckless driving that's taking place throughout the city? We've seen reckless driving in many neighborhoods, including South Boston, including the Back Bay, downtown Boston. Many of them are fast cars or motorcycle types. What infrastructure improvements can you consider so that pedestrians are safe in and around those neighborhoods?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I know this weekend in the Back Bay we had an incident, and there has been numerous incidents in other parts of the city. Generally speaking, right, there's an infrastructure component to this, and there's an enforcement component to this. I'll confine myself to the infrastructure piece of it. We typically will deploy traffic calming strategies that are similar to what we would use to calm traffic generally to address some of the kinds of behavior that we've observed. So as an example, along American Legion Highway, which is another well-known, many decades-long spot for this kind of behavior, the city did substantially narrow the roadway to make it more difficult for two cars to race each other side by side along American Legion. That's why there is a bike lane, but the primary purpose of that project was to reduce the stretches of that road where people drag race down to one lane. And then many of the surrounding streets that people were using to loop back around as they did these kinds of activities, we've added speed humps, which makes them very uncomfortable to drive fast on, especially if you have an expensive car that is low to the ground. So, we're looking at trying to deploy these kinds of traffic calming strategies in as many places as possible. Certainly the Back Bay, where we saw some incidents over the weekend, although not every street can be narrowed, there are some places where it may make sense to make some design changes to the street to narrow them and make them less attractive as places for this kind of activity, as well as a few streets in the Back Bay that are eligible for speed humps.
Thank you, Chief.
Yep.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Councilor Fernandez Anderson, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief Grafenberger, I noticed that most of the projects, and this is prior to your time and up to now, in District 7 are basically schools, transportation, playgrounds, Franklin Park, elementary school, and elementary study. It is 110,000, something like that, and the library, the South End Library. And then there's about 250,000 for BCYF, the Johnson Center, to be renovated. But there aren't any specific, projects. There's never exciting projects in D7 in general for amenities. And I'm grateful to the transportation. I'm very happy about the whole climate resiliency agenda that we have. It's like tremendous. But there aren't any amenities, and the district constituents would argue that these don't necessarily, dismantle systemic racism, that it doesn't invest in our social determinants of health to really, create opportunities to close the wealth gap. So what is the thinking so far with administration in terms of moving forward in the future with investments that actually invest in social determinants of health?
Sure. Thanks for that question. So obviously, depends what we're talking about, right? The city's capital plan is sort of limited to certain types of things that we can fund. And so we rely really, on departments to help, who have done sort of that community engagement to understand what are the priorities in community and, have that flow of information coming directly from the community through the departments to us as we're building the capital plan and bringing forward requests that are things that we can, actually fund with public dollars and, that fit kind of with our capacity and ability to do types of projects like you're talking about.
I could see where that conversation, it makes sense in terms of planning and, one, does the community want it? Two, has it been in planning or has it been a study? If not, should it be a study? But we make these arguments often here in the council about the different levels of investments that are needed in the historic racial harms and how to redress them. This means that we're looking at amenities, for example, creating this holistic ecosystems of housing to be able to provide a higher quality of life for District 7, and particularly Roxbury, that we know is sort of desolate and dilapidated and doesn't necessarily have anything. So with all the streets infrastructure, with all the, adding trees and climate, of course, those are very, very crucial, and that Lower Roxbury being second to suffering from that, right? But then the argument is, how are we supporting? It's like the actual people, the citizens, and I see South Boston and other places, and I'm very happy for them, Jamaica Plain with a lot of investments in terms of, amenities or small business. So looking forward to, I'd be interested. We're going into spatial mapping study phase of our project with District 7. And looking forward to maybe including you in that conversation and how we can, maybe you can support me in terms of understanding, like guiding me in the direction of how do we get to a point where things can be funded and things cannot.
Yeah, I would be happy to be part of that.
Thank you. And so when you, is it possible, and I can ask Karishma, our own people here, to break down, but do you already have a breakdown by district, the capital investments by, grant, source of revenue, grant, city funds, and bonds, and may I have that?
Yes, we have that, and we can certainly provide that to you.
Please, through the chair. Thank you so much. And then, so pool repairs, can we have a breakdown? Thank you so much. Pool repairs, can we have a breakdown where? Which pools? Who's that? Who answers that?
The BPS pools, but I don't have the community center pool information. Give me a second.
Oh, I see. The funds are like kind of mixed up. It's $5 million for both.
Yeah, so I know there's $2 million allocated to the Holland, there's $2 million allocated to the Blackstone, and there's about $8 million or so total for like general pool repairs for BPS anyway. But then there's other dollars associated with BCYF separately, and there's other fundings for that.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, we're doing a capital just for BPS separate, right?
Yes.
A hearing? Okay, I'll wait. Thank you
Okay.
so much. So there's a part here that under citywide percent for the arts, that 1% of the annual plan bond issuance is designated for commissioning of permanent public art and municipal spaces. Can you tell me more about that?
Sure,
What is it for? What does it look like? How do people get the money?
Yeah, so it's a program that sort of, when there's a new building being constructed, it gives an opportunity to include public art installations. So they sort of, they run in parallel with a lot of projects that Kerry manages, but it's the Arts and Culture Commission who hires the artist, coordinates the work. There's probably some coordination that probably needs to happen to make sure that it fits within the facility, but so it's a good program to get public art into.
Oh, it sounds fantastic. How long has it been around?
I'm not sure. I think it's been around for maybe at least 6 or 7 years. Yeah.
See how much I missed.
Yeah.
And so, great. I'd like to learn more about that. So, Arts and Culture Commission. Thank you. And can you send me a list, Chief Yasha, if it's okay with you? May I have a list of the speed hump schedule? I know that the map is online, and we use it very often because we get so many calls about it. And so can I get a list just for the schedule for South End and Fenway?
Yeah, I'm happy to give you a list of the districts that are prioritized over this kind of first period of speed hump installation versus the ones that are not. We don't have a more precise schedule yet about when each of the areas that are likely to happen this year and next year will happen, but we can certainly give you a list of which are prioritized. That
would help. Thank you so much. As far as the dog recreation areas for various parks, this is the general money. The $500,000. Back to the question of Council Weber, but more specific, do we know what areas, or is this like every district will get one?
So that 500,000 was put in there because when we go into a park renovation project, we'd always say a dog park isn't in the scope. So now we can't say if a community wants a dog park, we now can pull from that separate dog money citywide if we want to add it to a capital project.
Okay, District 7 first. All right, thank you. Thank you so much. That's clear. Open space acquisition. Who can tell me more about this $10 million? I love this right away. This is like my favorite part.
So we started doing more acquisitions over the past couple of years. We have one officially complete. We have 3 in the works right now. And I believe that $10 million is in there for a Fort Point waterfront one. I don't think it's ever been defined what the 10 million was for, but if it was that or if it was a Chinatown project. But
This one for preservation and use of public open space.
right, so I'll make sure I get the answer to exactly what the $10 million was slated
There
for.
is a separate money for the waterfront.
It might be TBD, but we'll get an answer for you.
I see. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilor Fernandez Anderson. Councilor Coletta, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. This is going to be a lightning round. I'm putting the important stuff up first, so just calling for things that I don't see in here that over the next 5 years, hopefully the residents of District 1 will like the job that I'm doing, and I'll be here to see some of these through. So in East Boston, I would love to see a new public works facility. They're working out of a box next to a $30 million new police station, and the juxtaposition is just really ironic, and you can't make it up. So I would love for them to get a new public works facility because they work very hard. I would like to understand what's happening with the old East Boston Police Station, if that's going to stay a public building for public good and public use. I know that the Planning Advisory Council under Plan Charlestown has identified a new ambulance bay in Charlestown as being desperately needed. And then also a new firehouse in Charlestown has been identified. So we'd love to see those included. You don't have to give responses to that. I just wanted to put that out there in terms of some of the asks. If you want to address it afterwards, please feel free. But for now, I have the technological infrastructure improvements. This is something I've been pushing out quite a bit, seeing that our internal systems and internal infrastructure is just as important to maintain city services as the things that we see in real time in space in the public realm. And so there's $3.5 million of overhauling technological platforms and to support city hiring, updates to permits, and other constituent-facing systems like 311 and street data. There was also $3 million. I guess this is my question because this is confusing because there's multiple presentations. So $3.5 million for overhauling technological platforms, and then another $3 million to support streamlining city approvals. Are those separate funds or are they the same?
So the $3.5 million you're referencing from yesterday's presentation, that's part of the operating budget. I think there are additional funds in the capital budget as well to support some of the infrastructure needs in IT as well.
Okay, so the $3 million is for streamlining city approvals. That's from the capital budget. That was the basis of my question.
Yeah. Give us 1 second. I think, sorry, let us clarify sort of sources of funds for all of those various do-it projects that you're mentioning.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yep.
There was a discussion about trash containerization. Is that from operating or capital for the pilot
I believe there's a
program?
pilot project included in the operating budget.
Okay, not capital. All right. Thank you. I'm looking to you, Sam. Now, O'Donnell School Playground. This is the 3rd year. I'm asking where this is at. They deserve a space right now. If you walk through it, it's pretty sad.
Well, first I just want to thank you publicly for your advocacy and the school committee's advocacy. I just want to share the good news that the bids have been out to do that work. We're in the process of finalizing an award to a contractor with the goal of starting the work this summer and completing it as soon as we can.
Thank you. And thank you for the Warren Prescott as well. I saw that the Otis just got some renovations, so really grateful for that. With the Otis School expansion, we had acquired the Paris Street space that used to be the Salesians. It hasn't been slated for prioritization through the MSBA process. What is the timeline for the Otis School and the expansion? Because we have some of our babies that are growing up and are now middle school age that need these seats.
Yeah, those are conversations we're still having internally around like the broader plan for long-term facilities planning work. So we'll have to be able to give you a further update at the next hearing.
At which hearing?
At the next hearing.
Which hearing?
The 23rd.
The 23rd? Okay,
Yes.
Thank you. Not next year budget cycle.
No, we'll give you an update
great.
soon.
I just wanted to confirm that because that was the answer last time. It's been talked about before, but the Edwards Middle School, so housing the Horace Mann community, which we welcome, and we're very grateful that they chose Charlestown, and that's working out. So that was supposed to be in the short term, right? So we're going to retrofit for the Horace Mann for X amount of years, and then it was supposed to go back. I say that in quotations because the horseman is all of our kids, right? We want to make sure that they're taken care of, but has anything changed in regards to the future of that school? Is it going to stay the horseman?
The school will remain as is. There are no plans to change the school and the way it's run and the academic programming there. Right now, the first goal is just to get it into the current location. Then we'll work on what, if anything, happens in the future with as part of the longer facilities master planning work that we're doing.
Okay, thank you. East Boston High School expansion. There was supposed to be space that was acquired for a dual language program, seeing that some of our kids are English language learners, they're new arrivals, and we just don't have the space for them. Has there been progress on that?
Yeah, we've been doing some internal planning. We have secured a site to do additional work and programming out of East Boston, and we're in the process of working on standing that up as we speak.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody want to say anything about what I talked about, the East Boston Public Works facility, what's happening with the old East Boston Police Station and a timeline for that, new ambulance bay or firehouse in Charlestown? Should I reserve those for departments? Maybe, Chief, since you have Public Works, why don't you talk about that?
I appreciate your advocacy on behalf of the Public Works folks working out of there, and completely agree. They're in trailers that are falling apart and need to be upgraded. We do have some money set aside for facilities improvements for Public Works in this capital budget, and we are, always looking at our collection of facilities and where to prioritize. And East Boston is certainly high on the list. So appreciate your advocacy for it. It is something that I hope we can make some short and long-term investments in their proper facilities for that team.
Thank you so much. I do have a number of projects in my district that are in design and construction. It is a beautiful thing to see these things manifest, and the fruits of your labor actually emerge in front of us, and it's great. And so just to confirm again, Clarity Pool, what date will it be open, Carrie?
July 1st?
June 30th. Okay, so I got it wrong.
Moving
All
it
right.
up now.
So ribbon cutting,
Give us another hour.
all of that. Look forward to that. Look forward to that. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Coletta. Advocating for departments for new spaces, OEM, I see that there's a study scheduled. I just want to get the idea of where that study is for a new space for emergency management.
office.
Yep.
We have looked at multiple areas for a combined public safety site. So we have not finalized anything for that, but we did do some research for them. And I don't believe there's a study or anything in the capital plan for it.
There's something on, it's a citywide, it says to be scheduled. I'm just looking at it. Yep, Emergency Operations Center, a program and inciting study for the development of Emergency Operations Center, 1.5 million.
We've completed the study for the OEM.
Okay, awesome. And then Geneva Cliffs. I know this has been on the capital plan for a while. Just kind of getting an update on where we're at with the whole Geneva Cliffs, the Urban Wild. Oh, yeah. Get over here.
We're there. We're in conversations, constant conversations with Eversource to see if they will sell us or trade with us some property so we can expand Geneva Cliffs Urban Wild. But I'll get a full update for you for our hearing of any short-term work that we have planned there while we continue to acquire that extra land.
Awesome. And site set, for the open space acquisition is, what do you have your eyes on for this pot of money?
For the open space acquisition plan, so what we've been doing is things are coming up one at a time. So we have a parcel priority plan where all residents got to chime in on saying, here's privately owned or publicly owned properties that exist in the city of Boston that you should keep your eye on. So we have a whole priority list of those, but certain things like the Peace Garden in Eggleston Square came up, and you have to move on it right away if you want to buy it, or it could be developed and things of that nature. So we're always prioritizing. We have a list ready to go of what's in order, but then there are those ones that come up, Sister Veronica's site in South Boston. for example, that came up the Archdiocese was putting on. So we're always trying to weave and make sure we use our priority list, but also have funds available when those immediate projects come up.
Awesome. So send you my wish list.
Sure.
All right. And bathroom renovations. I've been in a few bathrooms throughout the district. What are slated for renovations? And then also, can you speak to supplies? Sometimes I walk into these high school bathrooms and, I'm rolling the dice on if there's soap, paper towels, toiletries. Can you talk to me about how often they're also supplied?
Yeah, since COVID, we moved to having a 3-month supply worth of supplies on hand at schools. So we do have stocks of those supplies in schools. The question I think just becomes replenishing in what cycle, right, and the monitoring of that. So I think it's a matter of making sure our custodians are going out, seeing if the supplies are low in those.
Do we have a custodian for each high school, or how does that work?
Yeah, each school building has either a group of custodians or custodians assigned to the school. And they're charged with going around. We do have one-man buildings. A lot of them are one-man buildings as well. So again, with one-man buildings, getting around to all the bathrooms, it could be challenging at some times, but we do have supplies on hand. I think it's a matter of the mechanism and speed by which we refill and stock everything up in the bathrooms themselves.
And what bathrooms are slated for renovation?
Those are still under discussion. Now that we have the budget and we understand the scope, we're going to be doing some more planning around what that looks like. But we do intend to do more bathroom renovations.
Got it. And how do you plan on making that decision? Are you using the rubric?
Our facilities condition assessment is what we did. We'll base it largely on that and the scores and the conditions, and then other factors that we'll consider as well.
And then with BPS taking over a good amount of the swimming pools, do you guys have the maintenance, the staff, the budget to maintain and upkeep the swimming pools?
We're developing that now. It's under development. We have added one staff person that's dedicated solely to work on our pools in collaboration with the Boston Centers for Youth and Families. But it is new to us, and we are trying to understand what the real scope of the work requires and what it entails and what the budget needs to be. I think we're in the transition phase of that. So I think now that we have a initial investment for the FY25 budget, we'll work through those dollars to see if that's sufficient or not, and we'll just continue to have conversations with our colleagues around what that looks like and what's needed.
Okay, and then Council Braden left me a few questions. And what is the process for projects closeout when a project is completed? So when does it fall off the capital plan list when it's completed?
When it's finally paid.
Yeah, I think sort of when there's a ribbon cutting, if it's a large facility, but they're often is trailing expenses that will follow even a project even when it's completed. But basically when people perceive it to be open,
All right, and then if there is no change in the status or there's no progression of a project, right? What happens then? Do projects ever fall off if it's stuck in, to be scheduled for X amount of years?
Nothing automatic, right? So sometimes things get stuck for reasons, cost, capacity, different, there could be different reasons. The design is changing, community needs are changing. It's unusual for us to take something out completely. I think, generally we like to keep things in the plan, ensure that we're committed to them, even if it's going to take us a little bit longer of a time to get to them. So, generally things stay. I don't think we have a particular automatic process for how things fall out unless, we make a major policy decision to change course.
Got it. And back to Deputy, can you speak to the progress of the BPS water filtration projects?
For that one, I'll defer to my colleague, Mr. Ford, to come down because he has the details around that. I don't have all the details, but I know we're progressing along. We have a lot of schools back online with the water systems in the schools themselves and not bottling water in anymore. So we've made a lot of progress. We've also gotten nationally recognized for the work we're doing around green initiatives, and that's part of the work that we've been recognized for. So I would defer to Mr. Ford to give you some details on that.
All right. And going back to Parks Commissioner, there's a little piece of, it is designated open space on Hyde Park Ave right across, I forgot the name of the park.
Amatucci? That's the one that's on Hyde Park Ave, but.
It's a small, it's not really.
It's a playground, has a half basketball court?
No, it's just open space.
Mount Hope.
Right, yes, right around,
Mount Hope.
yes.
Yes.
Any conversation around upgrading or adding seating to that open space?
We can look in, and it's not in our capital plan to do any work, but if it's
Okay.
something like adding trash barrels or we don't have to wait for a capital cycle for that.
All right, perfect, yeah, because I know, the residents over there, they're advocating for more open space and then just upgrading that parcel of land.
Okay.
Yep.
The water question. Good afternoon, Brian Ford, BPS Facilities Executive Director. And so when it comes to the water project, we've been progressing against all of our schools and we're doing a pretty good job right now. It's a phased out project where we're adding water fountains, and then once we've done all of the water fountains and filler stations, we're going to be returning to our first schools that have some of the older infrastructure and getting them done. In the meantime, any school that has not already finished their installation of the water fountain, we do provide them with bottled water just to make sure that we're doing annual testing on all of those surfaces and providing that fresh water to students. And then any school that has any changes in it, we automatically stop those water fountains from operating and make sure that we're able to send somebody out to either change the filter, change the fountain, and then we're doing ongoing maintenance to make sure they're operable in our schools.
Awesome, and then your goal for the year, is it 5 schools every year? How many schools do you plan on?
So that actually varies. Based on the size of the package of the work that we're doing, it's more so a number of units that we're trying to put in and trying to get through all those schools. So first we go with the kind of like supporting infrastructure of the building, whether that's the electrical or the plumbing, or you can see that they're actually packaged in some finished carpentry. We do all of that work first, and then we go and install the units. So that number will vary, and I can give you an example. Package 1 had 9, package 2 had 20. That's all based on the size of the school.
Thank you. Councilor Fernandez-Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner, in terms of the street tree planting, do we have like an equitable strategy to that? Are we like Chinatown first, Lower Roxbury second?
So we're not doing it by neighborhood, but what we're doing is we have our heat maps all around. So when we're planting in all different neighborhoods to hit those heat zones and stuff, and EJ communities first. But that urban forest plan helped us define where all those areas are, and we follow them and have them all mapped. So I can make sure you have the link, but you can see where every single time we plant a street tree exactly where it goes.
That's fantastic. Thank you. In terms of urban wilds, can you tell me a little bit more? I guess distribution of this allocation, this $2 million. It's citywide funds,
So our Urban Wilds crew is small but mighty. There's 3 of them on, and there's 30 Urban Wilds in the city. And Urban Wilds are those overgrown naturalistic sites where you're like walking through a forest, if you will, in the city, such as like a Geneva Cliffs, Condor Street in East Boston. So it's really trail maintenance and stuff, so making sure it's safe in areas for people and accessible to explore and get through. But it's not like there's benches or fixtures or stuff. It's more cutting down overgrown invasives, etc.
although I think National Grid should give more to Geneva Cliffs.
Eversource, yes.
Eversource, thank you. I guess, we have some parcels in District 7 that looks like Urban Wild. Are we gonna, is this some of the money can go to that or not?
So we could see if those are parcels that we can acquire, and then once they're acquired, we could maintain them and put them in our portfolio of urban wilds throughout the city.
Oh, great. Thank you. I look forward to giving you the inventory. Thank you. As far as security cameras in schools, are we going to get some at the O'Brien? They have a bunch of broken ones.
We can pull up the list and I can tell you where we are, but I know we did prioritize all the larger high schools, and we went through about few. I don't know if Mr. Ford, if you have that list, you can come down and give the update on that as well.
Thank you.
But we did commit to do $30 million over 5 years, and we did a great significant amount of work this year alone as well.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Chief Yasha, sorry I keep bouncing. I'm just going down this list. Of the $1.4 million for the electric charging stations, that's so exciting. Can we get one in Roxbury?
Yes, we have a list of the stations that we have planned. We are planning to put them throughout the neighborhood, both at city facilities and at on-street charging spaces. And so they're very well dispersed throughout the neighborhoods. And we are focusing on communities right now that don't have sufficient EV charging to allow people who choose to do so to get an electric vehicle. So there will be some in Roxbury, and I'm happy to get you that list.
Oh, nice. Wasn't there some sort of pilot for rideshare of electric vehicles? Or is that just a dream? Is that a dream?
There are some of the rideshare companies are certainly trying to encourage their drivers to switch to electric vehicles. I don't know that at least presently there's no city rideshare. There's a car sharing program that is a very small scale, almost like an alternative to Zipcar. So it is an income scaled program called Good to Go. There are a small number of vehicles located at Roxbury Community College in the lots with the solar panels above them, as well as several in JP. So there are a few in the neighborhood. It's a small program, but it does offer very affordable car share services.
Any plans to expand that? Do you know?
Not at this time, no.
Thank you. Sorry.
That's all right. Good afternoon again. So just to touch base on the O'Brien security cameras, so we don't generally give out the information specifically on a school by school. We definitely give you a look at each of them, but I can let you know the O'Brien does have cameras and has had them replaced, just not going through the details of each additional school from there.
Why not? Oh, I see. Thank you. Thank you. Understood. Okay, sorry. I think I have one more chair. Thank you so much. The Climate Resilience Reserve. Tell me about this. It's only $4 million. But what is that? And when do we use it? And how does that get allocated when you need it? Reserve for Climate Resilience Capital Investments.
It's something similar to what Ryan was referring to with Dog Park. It's a reserve to apply resilient elements to park projects.
Just in case you need more funds?
Yeah, yep.
Okay, thank you so much. I have like 20 other questions.
Go ahead, you have more time.
No. Don't you want to eat lunch?
I do want to eat lunch. It's actually waiting for me in the back.
I do, but I can submit them in an email. Thank you.
All right. I just have a few more questions. The property acquisition for schools, $4 million. That seems like a random number, or is it a random number? Is there something that you guys have your eyes set on already for?
No, we put it as a placeholder. So what we've learned, for example, with Councilor Coletta's question around securing space in East Boston, we wanted to make sure we had some reserves in place so that we're able to secure additional sites if we need to. So it's just a placeholder is how I would describe it.
Awesome. And then last question is Thetford Ave Playground. There's a basketball court. The retaining wall is also part of the neighbor's driveway, and it's a lot of like just patchwork. So the neighbor is asking if we can, do more of a permanent fix to that retaining wall that is up against the basketball court.
I'm happy to have someone go take a look at it and assess, the damage, make sure it's city property, and see what we can do to fix it.
Awesome. And then, thank you guys. You guys are like the nuts and bolts of city services. Each one of your offices and departments have always been so responsive and always been willing to collaborate. So thank you. My constituents rely on every one of your departments, and you guys continuously show up day in and day out. So thank you to you and your team. Also, thank you to central staff. And this hearing is adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you.